If you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks because this is a long one. Tonight isn't a quick Easter egg montage. This is a full-on late-night Rockstar Sans. 2 hours plus of the stuff they left in the code, in the mountains, in the shadows of Los Santos and beyond, and just never really talked about again. You can treat this like a bedtime story for people who know every alley of Los Santos, every dirt road in San Andreas, and still don't feel like they've seen everything. Let it play. While you lie back, lights low, maybe you're grinding crates, maybe you're just staring at the ceiling. The pacing's going to be steady, almost like an audiobook. One mystery bleeding into the next with minimal pauses, because the whole point is that you can drift in and out and still follow what's going on. The core idea is simple. We're going through Rockstar's biggest unsolved mysteries and hidden threads. The stuff that's believed to be important but never fully explained. Mount Chiliad, and its mural that still hasn't had an official breakdown, even after every UFO trigger was pulled apart by data miners. The Infinity 8 Killer, with body bags, hotel rooms, and numbers, scribbled around the map that never quite lock into a clean answer. Ghosts on the cliffs at 11 p.m., phantom cars that drive themselves, strange NPCs that feel like they wandered in from another game. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a normal dev interview if they just said what any of it meant, but in reality Rockstar mostly just smirks and changes the subject. So we're going to fill in the gaps. We'll talk about cut glyphs sitting in GTA V's files with no missions attached, Red Dead's strange man who shows up across games without a confirmed identity, and all the urban legends that started as myths like Bigfoot in San Andreas, and then got half-canonized later. Style-wise, it's casual and conversational. I'm going to talk to you like you're on the couch next to me at 2 a.m. Controller on the table, YouTube on the TV. No big dramatic intros every 5 minutes, just a continuous info dump of lore, speculation, and in-game evidence. It's also revealed that each segment stands on its own, so if you wake up halfway through a UFO section after dozing off during a serial killer part, you're not lost. So get comfortable, dim the lights, adjust the volume so it's just under your thoughts, maybe grab some snacks if you ain't sleeping, and actually want to keep up. Commit to staying, even if your brain checks out for a bit, because the fun part is that all these mysteries are secretly connected. The Chiliad mural, the Infinity 8 clues, missing characters, weird radio lines, unused interiors, they start to point at the same habit. And that's the hook for the whole night. What if every unresolved secret, every weird glyph, every missing person poster that never pays off was left hanging on purpose, and Rockstar never planned to give us closure at all? So before we start acting like every texture in Los Santos is part of some 12-step summoning ritual, we should talk about what actually counts as a Rockstar mystery. Because this isn't just a tour of funny Easter eggs where you see a movie reference and move on. A Rockstar mystery is the stuff that feels like it should lead somewhere, but never officially does. It's the Chiliad mural that looks like a puzzle, the Infinity 8 killer clues scattered on rocks and motel walls, the weird glyphs on the ocean floor with no confirmed trigger. It's also revealed that some of these have datamine leftovers in the files, like extra symbols and unused textures, which suggests something bigger was planned, but you never get a mission marker, you never get a cutscene, you just get vibes. We're talking unresolved lore threads, unexplained symbols, and odd NPCs that act like they wandered in from a different game. You have characters like the altruist cultists, the Epsilon members, or that one hiker who talks about they watching from the mountain, and in reality they feel like pieces of a story you're not fully allowed to see. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a normal open world if Rockstar ever came out and said, yeah, here's what this means. But they don't. So for this video, we're going to keep circling 4 main types of mysteries. First are the environmental puzzles, murals, glyphs, cryptic maps, UFO spawn conditions, that kind of thing. Then you've got the urban legends like Bigfoot in San Andreas, Leatherface rumors, ghost cars. The way the Bigfoot myth was fake at first and then got canonized in GTA and online. After that come the narrative gaps, like missing characters, conflicting timeline details, or people who vanish between games with no real explanation. And finally you have the meta mysteries, where dev interviews, loading screen hints, or ARC-style websites seem to tease something, but Rockstar never fully pays it off. If you ain't sleeping yet, grab some snacks, because this is a long one and we're not just staying in Los Santos. GTA V and GTA Online are the core of it, since that's where the modern mystery hunting scene really exploded, but we're also going to pull in Red Dead and older GTA titles whenever they clearly feed into this culture. The strange man watching John Marston, the ghost train rumors, the way Red Dead 2 quietly links back to San Andreas conspiracy radio. It's believed that all of that sits on the same shelf as the Chiliad mural. We're going to keep it cozy though. No need to turn this into a programming lecture. Our case files are in-game dialogue, textures, mission design, and yeah, some data-mined evidence when it actually helps. If a line on a radio show explains a glyph on a wall, we'll bring it up. If a cut interior or unused script makes a mystery weirder, we'll talk about it without pretending you need a degree to follow along. And before we dive into jetpacks, cults, and the really unhinged stuff people tried on 3 a.m. Chiliad runs, we need to start with the mountain that basically defined all of this. The place that turned Rockstar secrets from background noise into a full-time investigation. Mount Chiliad basically becomes ground zero for all of this. If you ain't sleeping, this is the part of the night where your brain starts connecting dots that maybe shouldn't be connected, and Rockstar knows that. Inside the little cable car station at the top, you get this weird, crude mural scratched onto the wall. It's not polished concept art. It looks like something a bored doomsday prepper drew with stolen markers during a power cut. You've got a pyramid-shaped mountain that clearly mirrors Chiliad's outline, branching lines like a flowchart. And at the base, 3 symbols, what looks like an egg, a cracked egg, and a jetpack icon. At the top of the pyramid you see a UFO symbol, and scattered around are lightning bolts and question marks that pretty much tell you, yes, this is supposed to be a problem you obsess over. Players noticed it almost immediately at launch, because you ride that cable car early on, and your eye just sticks to this insane conspiracy board in the corner. The first layer actually did get solved. People figured out that the UFO icon wasn't just random graffiti, it was also a literal instruction. Data miners went into the files and mapped out the conditions. You need 100% completion, it has to be raining or stormy, and you have to be on top of Mount Chiliad at exactly 3 am in-game. Do all that, and a saucer appears, hovering over the mountain, locked in place like it's frozen in ice. It's believed that this was Rockstar's way of rewarding the most obsessive players, because in reality it doesn't give you money, weapons, or anything useful. It just silently sits there while you stare at it and question your life choices. But once that UFO was locked in, the mural actually got weirder. The jetpack icon at the bottom suggests some kind of second reward, yet story mode never gives you a usable jetpack. People glitched into the Fort Zancudo UFO, searched every bunker, dug through scripts, and it's also revealed that there are jetpack-related strings and textures in the files, with no clear trigger. The egg icon is similar. You can link it to the Chiliad UFO crash site, or to the altruist cult, or to the spaceship parts with Omega, but nothing lines up perfectly with the branching steps on the mural. The whole layout reads like a step-by-step puzzle where you'd unlock multiple phases, but you only ever get these disconnected payoffs that feel like half a treasure map. Rockstar has never sat down and actually explained this thing, No full breakdown in interviews, no official guide saying, here's what every symbol means. A decade later, that silence is what keeps people running the same tests at 3 a.m. If the community solved Chiliad, but the mural still doesn't quite add up, did we miss a step? Did Rockstar cut something? Or is this our first big clue that some of their mysteries are built to be dead ends on purpose? And that's where the mural stops being just paint and starts being training. Mount Chiliad basically taught an entire generation of GTA players that if you stare at a wall long enough, the wall will eventually start staring back. If you ain't sleeping, this is where the rabbit hole really begins. In the early days, people camped up there like it was some doomsday bunker. You had forum threads running for hundreds of pages, where players argued about tiny pixels, YouTube channels dedicated to nothing but Chiliad updates, and clips of people standing in thunderstorms at 3 a.m., pointing their cameras at the sky, waiting for a UFO that only appears if you've hit 100%. Some players left their consoles on overnight because they were convinced something special would trigger only during a specific storm, on a specific day after a specific mission. In reality, most of them just woke up to their character shivering in the rain. The funny part is how simple the mural actually is. A triangle, some horizontal lines, a few boxes, 3 crude UFO shapes, and that little cracked egg at the bottom. But people started reading it like a technical blueprint. The stacked lines were believed to be elevator levels. The boxes on the sides supposedly marked underground bunkers or secret interiors. The egg was a trigger condition. The UFOs were different outcomes. It's also revealed that none of that structure ever really exists in the code the way people imagined it. But the theory stuck because they explained away that empty feeling of this can't be all. Once you've convinced yourself that a triangle and a few boxes hide an entire secret ending, every weird texture in the game starts to look loaded. Random wall scribbles in sandy shores suddenly became coordinates. A blood-stained pattern in a back alley was believed to be a map. A weirdly placed box in an alley or a single cone on a rooftop turned into step 4 of the Chiliad mystery. People broke into unused interiors, glitched through doors at the humane labs, and treated every locked gate like it was hiding the real elevator they were owed. Rockstar saw all this and just stayed quiet. No big debunk, no lore drop, just the occasional wink. Later updates added more cryptic symbols in places like Fort Zancudo, extra UFO spawns, and even stranger glyphs painted on rocks, which suggests they were watching the community and gently nudging the obsession without ever confirming anything. It blurred the line between intentional design and playful mockery, because at some point you can't tell if they're building a mystery or just feeding one. By that point, players were fully primed. Once Chiliad rewired everyone's brain, they started seeing patterns everywhere, especially when they looked up. If a single mural could hide a secret UFO, what else was waiting in the skies above San Andreas? If you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks, because this is a long one and the sky above San Andreas does not shut up. Once players realized the Chiliad mural might be pointing to something, they started finding a whole network of UFOs that felt less like random Easter eggs and more like pieces of an unfinished puzzle. The most famous one is the Chiliad summit craft. You only see it if you stand on the exact platform by the cable car station at 3 a.m. during a thunderstorm, and only after getting 100% completion. That setup alone suggests Rockstar wanted it to feel like you unlocked a secret ending. Instead, you just get a classic saucer hovering silently in the rain, with no cutscene, no dialogue, nothing that actually explains what the mural was talking about. Then you have the underwater crashed UFO north of Paleto Bay, lodged in the seabed. You can only really appreciate it with a sub or scuba gear, which already makes it feel like something you weren't meant to casually stumble into during a random jet ski trip. It's covered in barnacles, has strange glyphs, and it's believed that this one is ancient compared to the others, like it's been sitting there long before the events of GTA V. The Fort Zancudo UFO is different again. It only appears if you fly high enough above the base after 100% completion, and it's locked in place by spotlights and a force field that fries your helicopter if you get too close. That military framing makes it feel like the government has its own captured craft, which would make a lot more sense in the context of the FIB, the IA, and all the conspiracy radio chatter about project targets and secret tests. Then online comes in and quietly adds more. You get the saucer above the farm during the Halloween events, abduction-style effects, and scripted encounters during certain missions. It's also revealed that some of these are straight up staged by humans in universe, while others lean into full alien territory, blurring whether you're dealing with the military, pranksters, or actual visitors. Because of that, a lot of players started treating the UFOs as different factions. The Chiliad Summit craft as the true alien ship, the Zancudo one as a militarized asset, the underwater wreck as an old crash site, and the online farm saucer as almost a cult prop. In reality, that tiered structure feels like stages of a larger storyline, where you'd uncover who found the tech, who weaponized it, and how it connects back to the mural. Data mining backs this up. People found unused UFO-related textures, extra glyphs, and scripts referencing triggers that never fire. That suggests parts of the mystery were cut or reworked, leaving the network in place, but disconnecting it from any final payoff. So did Rockstar always want the UFO web to just hang over San Andreas as spooky wallpaper? Or was this the first casualty of a Chiliad storyline that got chopped mid-development and quietly buried under the clouds? And that's where the jetpack starts haunting the whole thing. On the Chiliad mural, one of the clearest symbols is that little stick figure with lines shooting out of its back. Players saw that and instantly went, okay, that's a jetpack. Not a parachute, not some artsy metaphor, a jetpack. Which, if you ain't sleeping, your brain immediately links to Gata, San Andreas, where the jetpack was this late-game reward you stole from Area 69 after a whole chain of government Black Ops-style missions. In San Andreas, it was tied to aliens, secret military tech, and a desert base. So seeing that exact idea quietly sketched into a mountain in GTA V suggested Rockstar was calling back to something specific, not just doodling. In reality, the game files back that up in a weird way. Data miners digging through GTA V's code found references to jetpack-related animations, control bindings, and even leftover prop data that never shows up in single-player. You have task names for putting on a jetpack, handling it in mid-air, and debugging text that explains how it should behave. It's also revealed that some of these strings are grouped near other Chiliad and UFO-related assets, which suggests they weren't just testing random toys. They were at least thinking about a functional jetpack existing in the same space as the mystery. But then, in story mode, nothing. No jetpack in the campaign, no mission payoff, just helicopters and your own disappointment. Years later, GTA Online's Doomsday Heist finally drops the Mammoth Thruster, a full-on jetpack hidden in a high-tech underground facility. On paper, that sounds like the missing piece. Underground base, secret tech, endgame content. Except the heist never once connects itself to Mount Chiliad or the mural. It treats the jetpack as another billionaire supervillain gadget, not a sacred reward for solving a decade-long riddle, which makes a lot of players feel like this was a repurposed asset, not the answer. Because of that, it's believed that a much larger single-player DLC, or mystery arc, was on the table at some point. The theory goes that Rockstar prototyped a Chiliad storyline involving underground bases, jetpacks, maybe even a San Andreas-style government conspiracy, then quietly shifted those ideas into online once shark cards became the real endgame. The code leftovers, the mural, and the later Doomsday content would make a lot more sense in the context of one connected plan that got chopped up and sold back to you piece by piece. So, if Chiliad is already acting like an echo of cut content you were never meant to fully decode, you have to ask, what else in Rockstar's worlds is just a ghost of an abandoned idea bleeding through the texture work? Grab some snacks, because the next mysteries look even less finished and a lot harder for Rockstar to pretend were accidents. And that takes you straight into Rockstar's weirdest design problem: what happens when the leftovers start talking back? In game dev, a leftover isn't romantic at all. It's the stuff that was supposed to be deleted and just wasn't. Unused textures for doors that never open, interiors you can see through windows but never enter, broken triggers that never fire, half-implemented scripts sitting in the files with no way to activate them in normal play. In reality, it's just junk data from a design change, but if you ain't sleeping and you're combing through files at 3 a.m., it starts to look like a treasure map. GTA V is full of this. Data miners found script fragments for extra UFO events that never trigger, coordinates for cut random encounters, and textures for mystery glyphs that don't seem to be used by any active mission. You also get those weird, fully modeled interiors under the map, like prototype safe houses and early versions of stores, that suggest someone at Rockstar built a whole plan, and then the plan just died halfway through development. No patch note ever said what those were for. They just sit there, like ghosts of missions that never happened. It's not just V either. In Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead 2, people dug up unused animals, early versions of the Strange Man's textures, and broken encounter scripts that look like they belong to extra sightings or conversations with him. None of them are ever officially explained, which makes them feel less like trash and more like redacted lore. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a studio that loved ARGs, but Rockstar mostly pretends they don't know what you're talking about. Because after Chiliad, players are primed to see intent everywhere. A random glyph texture in the file stops being a cut test and becomes step 4 of a secret puzzle. An unreachable interior becomes the real meeting place of a cult. A broken trigger isn't a bug. It's believed that it's a hidden condition nobody's met yet. People build full timelines, flowcharts, and multi-hour theory videos around things that might literally be a designer forgetting to clean up their mess. Rockstar's communication style only makes this worse. Patch notes talk about general stability fixes instead of "we quietly killed your favorite rabbit hole." Interviews dodge specifics, like when devs are asked about Chiliad or the Strange Man, and just laugh it off or change the subject. They almost never step in to say, yeah, that door texture is nothing. So the silence explains nothing, and the mystery explains itself. But here's where it gets really strange. Sometimes there really was nothing there at first, and then Rockstar circles back years later and turns the myth into content. The best example is one of GTA's oldest legends, a creature people swore they saw in San Andreas even when the file said he didn't exist. And in GTA V, Rockstar finally decides to make that lie real. So, you know that lie made real line? That's basically the full life story of Bigfoot in GTA. If you ain't sleeping, this is one of those myths that started as nothing, got denied by Rockstar, and then slowly crawled out of the woods and into canon. Back in GTA, San Andreas, players swore they were seeing something in the forests around Baco Beyond and Mount Chiliad. A tall shape between the trees, moving just out of frame, always at night or in the fog. People started posting grainy screenshots where, if you squinted, you could kind of see a silhouette that looked like a Sasquatch. It was believed that there was a hidden model out there, some secret creature wandering the map because Rockstar was too edgy to admit it. In reality, the files were data-mined. No Bigfoot model, no animations, nothing. Rockstar devs even said in interviews that Bigfoot wasn't in San Andreas. But the denial just made it better. The myth dug in. Players began combing the woods, trying every weird setup you can imagine, only at 3 am. Only during certain weather. Kill 0 pedestrians, drive a specific car, walk a certain path. If you ain't sleeping, you've probably watched one of those old conspiracy videos where someone circles pixels in red and calls it proof. The Bigfoot story became part of talk culture. It explains why, years later, when GTA V comes out, Rockstar doesn't just ignore it. They go the opposite way and decide to canonize it in the most Rockstar way possible. You get the peyote plants, and if you eat a specific one in the Chiliad area under certain conditions, you hallucinate as an actual Sasquatch, stomping around Los Santos and roaring at people. The game just quietly says, yeah, fine, you wanted Bigfoot? Here, be Bigfoot. Then you have the mission, the last one. A guy named Dreyfus-style Crank, a supposed Bigfoot hunter, hires Franklin to track a creature through the woods. You follow prints, you chase sounds. It builds up like the myth is finally real. And when you corner it, it's revealed that the Sasquatch is just a skinny dude in a hairy suit trying to scare hikers. The hunter freaks out, the magic dies, and it plays like Rockstar is trolling a decade of rumors. But this would make a lot more sense in the context of Rockstar's bigger pattern, because they don't leave it there. Later updates and GTA Online events start dropping more Sasquatch references. Random costumed NPCs, the Bigfoot outfit, that weird Halloween business where it's believed a real creature might be out in the fog if you meet certain conditions. The line between a guy in a costume and an actual monster gets blurry again. That's the pattern interrupt. Something that started as pure community invention, confirmed fake in San Andreas, slowly mutates into semi-canon in GTA V. Rockstar turns an urban legend into content, but keeps it just ambiguous enough that you're still not sure what's real. And once you see that, a lot of other impossible GTA myths start feeling less like accidents and more like a design choice they enjoy feeding. And once you see Rockstar leaning into Bigfoot like that, you start looking back at the older myths they never touched, the ones they just let grow feral. Leatherface in San Andreas is the perfect example. You had kids in 2004 swearing that if you went deep enough into Back-O Beyond, or those foggy woods around Shady Creek, you'd eventually run into a chainsaw killer hiding in some rotten shack. No cutscene, no mission marker, just this idea that somewhere out there the game was still waiting to jump scare you. Players would comb every cabin, every barn, every random shed with a single light on. They'd find a chainsaw pickup, a bloodstained texture, maybe a creepy pedestrian model that spawned at the wrong time, and that was enough. It's believed that screenshots of totally normal NPCs, taken at night with low resolution and bad flash photography, basically became proof that Leatherface was real. In reality, there is no Leatherface model in the files, but that didn't matter, because the story was better than the code. The ghost cars worked the same way, just with more physics and less gore. In the hills near Back-O Beyond, cars spawn on slopes so they can roll down into the player's path. The game just drops them in neutral with no driver, because that's cheaper than simulating someone parking and getting out. But if you're alone, it's foggy, and a beat-up Glendale slowly creaks down the hill at you with the engine off. That feels like a haunting, not a spawn script. People even claim the cars followed them, when in reality the AI was just trying and failing to find a road. These stories spread before anyone was data mining disk images on YouTube for a living. You heard about Leatherface from a cousin who saw him once, but didn't get a picture. You heard about ghost cars from a forum post with 3 grainy screenshots and a paragraph written like a campfire story. Early YouTube only made it worse, because low bitrate and jump cuts can make any shadow look like a monster. If you ain't sleeping, this is a long one you could easily lose whole nights to, just driving around trying to recreate someone else's blurry encounter. Rockstar's response was basically to never respond. No official debunk, no lore entry in a manual, no in-game radio host coming on to say, hey, by the way, Leatherface isn't real. Instead, you keep getting horror-tinged spots and props, the murder shack, the graveyards, the hanging corpses in Red County, the crashed planes, all this environmental storytelling that suggests something terrible happened here, but refuses to explain what. And that's where it starts to feel intentional. If they saw how powerful all that was in the PS2 era, all the kids driving in circles at 3 a.m. looking for ghosts, how likely is it that they went into GTA V without planning for mystery hunters from day one? So by the time you get to GTA V, it feels like Rockstar just leans into that on purpose. The map is huge, but it's not just huge, it's weirdly curated for late night rumor hunting. You drive out into the desert or up some forgotten dirt road, and suddenly you're in these little pockets of atmosphere that feel way too specific to be random dressing. You've got the shack with the bloody chair and the chains in sandy shores, the cult compound up in the hills, the ghost of Jolene Cranley Evans on Mount Gordo, the crying and whispers you can hear around certain cabins at night. A lot of these spots have creepy audio or props that suggest a story, but never actually give you one. It's like they're half-finished crime scenes, left just complete enough that your brain fills in the missing bodies. Then you start noticing how dense the writing on the walls is. Los Santos and Blaine County are absolutely covered in scribbles, warnings, and symbols that go way past basic world building. Underpasses are filled with strange faces and eyes. Alleyways have doomsday rants and numerology. And you'll see the same odd glyphs reappearing from Vespucci Beach bathrooms to remote desert rocks. Some of it is tied to obvious jokes, but some of it just sits there, repeating patterns you can't quite decode. If you ain't sleeping, this is the stuff that keeps you driving around at 4 a.m. screenshotting graffiti like it's a crime scene board. Rockstar's history backs this up too. In San Andreas, Bigfoot was just a rumor. No model, no mission, just kids convincing each other something was out there because the forest felt wrong. Years later, GTA V canonizes that myth with the Sasquatch missions, peyote transformations, even the guy in the costume. It's also revealed that other old myths get folded back in as winks, like the Chiliad UFOs echoing all the old ghost plane and alien stories from the PS2 era. That suggests they're paying close attention to what the community obsesses over and then designing future games to feed that exact instinct. At the same time, the sheer scale of GTA V gives them cover to hide dead details everywhere. When you have this many interiors, cliffsides, and back alleys, you can scatter props, textures, and symbols that were part of cut content or inside jokes, and it's believed that players will still build entire theories around them. In reality, some of those threads probably never led anywhere, but Rockstar knows the silence is part of the fun. And then you hit something that feels too structured to be an accident, like the Infinity 8 killer. The graffiti about 8 is just infinity stood up, the numbered corpses in the ocean, the wall rants about cleansing and rebirth. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a full true crime side story, but instead it stops right before closure, like they built a puzzle specifically to never quite resolve. And that's where the mysteries stop feeling like background noise and start feeling like a design pillar. So when you zoom in on that phrase, 8 is just infinity stood up, you're not just looking at some edgy graffiti. You're basically tripping over one of GTA V's coldest cold cases. And Rockstar never sits you down to explain it. No cutscene, no mission marker, just a wall rant in the middle of nowhere that quietly tells you a serial killer lived here. You first stumble on it as Franklin or Trevor, usually by accident, because it's just scrawled on a ruined shack in the Gran Senora Desert. The writing is obsessive, with numbers, infinity symbols, and these rambling lines about rebirth and cleansing. It's also revealed that the author talks about 8 being infinity stood up like it's some kind of holy math. And he keeps repeating that he took 8. They are mine. Nothing pops up on your map. The game doesn't care if you walk away. But if you don't, the rabbit hole starts. Players eventually realize the wall isn't the mystery. It's the key. Out in the ocean, off the east coast of the map, divers started finding corpses on the seabed, fully modeled bodies lying next to suitcases, car wrecks, and random debris. Each one is placed near a rock or surface where another Infinity 8 message is written, usually with a number. That placement suggests a pattern, like the killer murdered 8 people and dumped them at sea along his own twisted checklist. What makes it creepier is how unofficial it feels. There's no police report in a cutscene, no Weasel News segment, no fib agent giving you exposition. The LSPD doesn't mention a serial killer during any mission. This is a completely optional environmental narrative, buried under the main story about heists and fib corruption. If you ain't sleeping, you can spend hours just driving to each scribble and diving on every numbered spot, while the game pretends nothing is happening. The community basically had to become the detectives Rockstar refused to write. People mapped every infinity symbol, every 8 and every ranting message, then matched them to ocean bodies and wrecks. It's believed that the numbers track the order of the killings, and that the different dump sites explain the killer's evolution, starting close to shore and moving further out as he gets bolder. Some fans even built a timeline, arguing he operated during a specific window before the events of JV, then abruptly stopped. But that's where it locks up. You can reconstruct the victims, the pattern, even his philosophy, and you still hit a wall. What happened to the killer? Did he die, get arrested off screen? Or is he just another NPC you walk past in Los Santos, hidden in plain sight while the game smiles and says nothing? And that's where the hunt really starts. Because once you accept the game won't point at a face, you start building one yourself. Fans basically turned the Infinity 8 killer into a ghost everyone can see, but nobody can touch. The first big theory is the rich guy angle. People think he was a wealthy yacht owner, someone who could afford to cruise way off the coast where nobody's watching. The bodies turning up near shipping lanes, the boat debris, the fact that you never catch him in some rusty dinghy, all of that suggests money. It's also revealed that some of the notes sound oddly educated, like he's trying to write poetry with a hangover. That fits the vibe of a bored Vinewood-adjacent millionaire treating murder like another hobby. Then you've got the cultist theory. Because this is GTA V, someone had to drag Epsilon into it. The repetition of the number 8, the circular, almost mantra style of some messages, and the location of a few clues near Epsilon-heavy areas made people think he was a rogue believer doing his own enlightenment program. This would make a lot more sense in the context of Rockstar's obsession with fake spirituality, and it's believed that some unused glyph textures might have been tied to a scrapped cult side mission. Another camp swears he was a cop, a corrupt detective with access to crime scenes, able to steer investigations away from himself, explains why no one in-game ever brings him up by name. The handwriting that mimics official reports, the weirdly specific references to procedure, and the timing of the killings before GTA V's story kicks off all support this idea. In reality, it also neatly ties him into the game's bigger theme of institutions quietly failing everyone. But the most unsettling theory is that he's nobody. Just a completely anonymous NPC we never meet. One of those background pedestrians you bump with your car and forget about. If you ain't sleeping, you start looking at every middle-aged guy in a polo shirt on Del Perro Pier and wondering if that's him. The problem is, you never get a body, a name, or a clean confession. All you really have is circumstantial stuff. Boat fragments, tide patterns, handwriting style, and the way the notes escalate. That's why some players think he died at sea, maybe in a storm, while others argue he was quietly arrested off-screen and buried in some generic newspaper headline you never read. A darker take is that he just stopped, and now he's living in Los Santos like nothing happened, standing in a crowd while you run past chasing a taxi. Pattern interrupt for you. This feels less like game writing and more like real life. The Infinity 8 killer ends up sitting next to things like the Zodiac or the Long Island cases, where you have taunting messages, partial evidence, and then nothing. Rockstar's refusal to patch in a resolution, even after years of fan interest, almost turns them into the local police department that won't talk. They've updated UFOs, Bigfoot, all kinds of myths, but this one stays frozen. Grab some snacks, because that silence is going to matter for the next mysteries we're about to dig into. That silence is the point. Because the Infinity 8 killer is basically what happens when you take G to V's main story, strip out the jokes and the heists, and just leave the bodies nobody cares about. You spend the whole game in a city that runs on violence. Michael, Franklin, and Trevor are blowing up freeways, robbing banks, wiping out entire gangs. The news calls it a daring robbery or a tragic incident and then moves on. Infinity 8 is the same thing, just smaller and quieter. A serial killer operates for years, signs his work with creepy wall messages and numbered clues, and in reality nobody in Los Santos notices unless you, the player, decide to go hiking and read rocks. It's believed that the lack of any official investigation is not a bug. It's the joke. You never hear a Weasel News segment about missing women. No radio host is connecting the dots. The cops have time to chase you for bumping a mailbox, but a decade-long killing spree written across the landscape? Nothing. That apathy from institutions and citizens is the same energy you see when the Fib covers up the Ludendorff heist, or when Devin Weston casually orders hits on union reps like he's ordering lunch. Infinity 8 is also revealed as just one of 100 background tragedies. During your drives, you'll find burned-out cars with a single body inside, roadside murder scenes, dead hikers, crashed drug planes in the Alamo Sea. None of these become missions. No quest marker pops up. They just sit there as environmental storytelling, suggesting that what you do in the main story is only the high-profile tip of a huge, rotting iceberg. This would make a lot more sense in the context of Rockstar satire if you think about how they treat celebrity deaths versus nobodies. Leonora Johnson gets a collectible murder mystery with a Vinewood angle. Peter Dreyfuss is a washed-up producer, so his crime becomes a puzzle you can solve and monetize. The Infinity 8 victims don't have a famous name attached, so their case gets downgraded to graffiti on a cliff. Rockstar's pattern suggests they see these side mysteries less as puzzles you're supposed to fully crack and more as atmospheric texture. They build this feeling that America is a place where horror is constant and content is temporary. The Mount Chiliad mural, the ghost of Jolene Cranley Evans on Mount Gordo, the random cult pamphlets, all of it reinforces that you're living in a world that's sick in ways nobody really wants to fix. They just want to film it. So if you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks because this is a long one. If Infinity 8 and the other background murders are just part of the atmosphere, what about the stuff that feels straight up supernatural? Are the UFOs, the ghost, and the Chiliad glyphs just mood pieces too? Or is Rockstar quietly hinting at a hidden canon under all the satire? So to answer that, you kind of have to go meet the one ghost in GTA V that actually shows up on a schedule. You drive out to Mount Gordo, middle of nowhere, and if you ain't sleeping, you wait until exactly between 11 p.m. and midnight in-game. Not 10:59, not 12:01. During that one in-game hour, the whole soundscape shifts. The wind gets louder, the ocean feels way too close, and you start hearing this low, almost mechanical howl that doesn't match anything else in the area. On the cliff face above the beach, you see her. A pale woman in a white dress, hair hanging down, just hovering there. That's Jolene Cranley Evans. If you stay back with a sniper scope, the model is clear, almost calm, like she's frozen at the exact second she died. But the second you try to get close, she vanishes in a puff of black particles. The sound cuts, and you're just standing on rock like you imagined the whole thing. Rockstar literally coded a ghost that refuses to be confronted. All you get to investigate is the crime scene she left behind. On the rock where she appears, the word Jock is written in blood. That's your only real hint, and it pushes you into old newspaper clippings and tiny environmental details. It's revealed that Jolene was married to Jackson Jock Cranley, a washed-up stuntman who reinvented himself as a conservative political candidate. The articles explain that during a hike on Mount Gordo, she fell to her death, but witnesses suggested he pushed her off the cliff because she didn't want to leave Blaine County for his Vinewood dreams. In reality, the game never proves it. The papers are biased, the wording is careful, and Jock is still out there doing radio interviews about law and order like he didn't maybe murder his wife. It's also revealed that he's running for governor, and NPC chatter suggests people either love him as a tough guy or see him as a joke, but nobody talks about Jolene. You can't confront him, you can't trigger a mission, and you can't solve the haunting. The ghost is locked to that one hill, that 1 hour, forever replaying the moment she died while the alleged killer campaigns on talk radio. So you get this perfect blend of true crime and paranormal, a possible domestic murder, a politician who walked away clean, and a victim who only exists as a jump scare and some red text. It explains nothing and changes nothing. You just drive off with this image burned in your head of a woman stuck in a loop because the world moved on without her. And that's the weird part. Is Jolene just a one-off spooky Easter egg? Or is she our first real hint that ghosts, monsters, and unexplained entities are an actual pattern in Rockstar's worlds that we haven't fully mapped yet? If you ain't sleeping after Jolene, the bad news is, she's not alone. Once you start looking, Rockstar's worlds are full of stuff that feels like it slipped in from a different genre, and nobody in universe wants to talk about it. In GTA V, you get the obvious ghost on Mount Gordo, but the quieter hauntings are the ones that stick with you. You've got those remote Blaine County shacks where the lights flicker even when the power grid is supposedly dead, and you can hear footsteps upstairs in buildings that don't have a second floor. Down in the subway tunnels and the storm drains, players have recorded strange voices during the dead hours of the night cycle, like half-heard PA announcements in a language that isn't actually used anywhere else in the game. It's believed that some of these are just audio leftovers, but the way they trigger only at certain times suggests someone set them up on purpose. You also have the Humane Labs coast at night, where divers report loud metallic groans and distorted sonar pings long before any submarine shows up. Inside, emergency lights flicker on and off even when the alarms aren't active, and you'll hear banging behind sealed doors that never open in any mission. In reality, you can write it off as ambience, but it plays like the building is still reacting to experiments that officially never happened. Then you jump over to Red Dead, and it gets even stranger. The original Red Dead Redemption has the ghost train that silently rides the tracks, clipping right through Arthur or John like they're the ghosts instead. There are haunted shacks where furniture moves between visits, candles relight themselves, and disembodied voices argue about events that don't match any named NPC. Red Dead Redemption 2 doubles down with the ghost lady on the road near Blue Water Marsh, and the church full of burned skeletons that resets every time you come back, as if the fire is stuck on repeat off-screen. Undead Nightmare is where Rockstar drops the pretense. You've got literal zombies, mythical beasts, and the 4 horses of the apocalypse running around, and the game just treats it like a bad week for John Marston. It's also revealed that familiar locations from the main game can support full supernatural events without breaking anything mechanically, which kind of retroactively makes the normal versions feel like they're suppressing something. Now, imagine Rockstar doing one game where they stop hinting and just say it. Full occult systems, ghosts you can talk to, demons signing contracts in the back of Tequila, a Mount Chiliad ritual that actually changes the map. You'd get a lore Bible, power trees, the whole thing. Then remember who we're dealing with. They seem to prefer this limbo state where every haunting is self-contained, rarely explained, and always just plausible enough to be a glitch. That's the balancing act. The satire and crime stories stay grounded, but the world itself keeps whispering that something older and weirder is under the surface, which sets up the next layer of mystery players keep arguing about years later. And if you ain't sleeping yet, grab some snacks. Because this is a long one and Rockstar's weirdest ghost story doesn't even stay in one game. The Strange Man in Red Dead Redemption is where a lot of people first feel that shift from grounded outlaw drama into something that just doesn't add up. You meet this guy in an immaculate black suit and top hat, standing way too clean for the time period, with this calm, polite voice like he's already bored of you. John Marston has never met him before, but the stranger talks like he's known John his whole life. He brings up John's crimes, his family, even his attempts at redemption, and it's believed that his dialogue straight up suggests he knows how John's story ends long before John does. During those encounters, you can try to shoot him. John fires, the bullets land, but the strange man doesn't bleed, doesn't flinch, and your honor level doesn't change. The game treats him like he isn't really a person at all, which quietly explains why he can walk into John's life, poke at every insecurity, and then vanish without any normal consequences. In reality, he feels less like an NPC and more like the game itself talking back. Then Rockstar doubles down in Red Dead Redemption 2. You never meet him directly, but it's also revealed that Arthur can find a cabin in the bayou with a half-finished painting of the strange man on the wall. Each time you come back, the painting is more complete, like he's slowly loading into the world. By the final stage, you can spot his reflection in the mirror behind you even though nobody's actually standing there. He's not aging, he's not changing, he's just present, like he exists outside normal time and is watching the Van der Linde tragedy play out decades before John's game. That's where the fan theories go wild. Some players think he's literally the devil, cutting deals and collecting souls across a frontier timeline. Others say he's fate, or death, or a kind of meta-observer who shows up whenever someone tries to outrun their past. This would make a lot more sense in the context of how he talks. Because he never gives direct answers, he just nudges people toward the choices they were already going to make. A smaller group even connects him to other mysterious Rockstar figures, like omniscient strangers in GTA side missions, who seem to know way too much about you. Rockstar has never put an official label on him. No codex entry, no lore blog, no actually he's X interview. They keep him in permanent limbo, important enough to recur across games, but vague enough that every theory can be true and false at the same time. Which raises the real bedtime question. If Red Dead has the strange man, does GTA have its own version hiding in plain sight? Those characters who act like they've read the script and then walk away before you can ever figure them out? So if Red Dead gets a full-on supernatural middle manager like the Strange Man, GTA V does something weirder. It scatters the people who know too much all over Los Santos, and then refuses to tell you if they're crazy, enlightened, or just reading from a different script than you. You hear it first with the street prophets. You'll be driving past Legion Square or hanging around Textile City, and some guy with a cardboard sign is yelling about aliens, mind control, and how the government is watching you through your phone. In reality, that just sounds like YouTube comments, but the details are oddly specific. Some preachers mention those lights above Chiliad before you've ever seen a UFO, or rants about the clouds that aren't clouds in a city where the fib literally gasses people and tracks them through Life Invader. Then you get the doomsayers who treat you like a glitch. One will shout about people who come back after being shot or complain that the world pauses when you look away, which is a really normal thing to yell at a stranger, but it also lines up a little too well with how the game actually works. It's believed that these lines are just meta jokes, but they feel like the NPCs briefly notice they're in a save file. Some of them go even harder on the fourth wall stuff. You'll hear characters complain that he just keeps switching bodies when you're cycling between Michael, Franklin, and Trevor, or talk about a higher power that makes people suddenly drive worse, which explains a lot about the online lobbies. It's also revealed that a few ambient dialogues directly reference player behavior, like buying weapons you never use or replaying missions, like they're quietly judging your grind. All of that sets the stage for the most organized version of this, the Epsilon program. Chris Formage and his blue-robed followers aren't just a Scientology parody. They talk about reality like it's patch notes. Their doctrine says the world is 157 years old, that identity is fluid, and that you've lived multiple lives you don't remember. That sounds like standard cult nonsense, until you remember you, the player, have probably lived multiple GTAs, multiple saves, and multiple endings. During Michael's Epsilon missions, they tell him he was born again in another form, and that time is a circle, which would make a lot more sense in the context of a franchise where protagonists get rebooted every generation. They insist that plastic objects are holy and that vehicles are spiritual extensions of the self, which is funny, but it also suggests they're the only in-world group that treats game mechanics like religious law. None of these prophets are confirmed Strange Man equivalents, but together they make it feel like a few NPCs are plugged into a deeper, broken version of the lore. And if you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks, because among all those voices, one cult is wired into the game more systematically than any other. The deeper you go into Epsilon, the more it starts to feel like the joke might be hiding something serious. The Epsilon program is where that feeling really starts to spiral, because this is the one mystery Rockstar actually walks you through while still refusing to explain anything. Michael gets pulled in like any washed-up Vinewood guy would. Late life crisis, too much money, not enough meaning, and a creepy website telling him salvation comes in blue robes. You sign up online, send them money, and suddenly Michael is jogging in the desert in a sky blue tunic, doing purity runs and collecting cars for Chris Formage, this soft-spoken cult leader who talks like a self-help tape that's been dropped in a puddle. During the missions you donate cash, you ferry members around, you steal vehicles, you literally walk 5 miles in the desert because enlightenment is apparently just cardio with extra steps. It's also revealed that if you pay the full 10 million, they give you a rusty tractor and a t-shirt. If you don't, Michael can flip on them and rob their final cash pickup like a heist, mowing down robed believers while the game quietly asks how spiritual you really were. All of that is backed up by the Epsilon website, which is where the real rabbit hole starts. The doctrine is dense and intentionally nonsensical, talking about how the world is 157 years old, that aliens exist and are present on Earth, and that you have lived many times, including as a 19th century Chinese peasant and as a 23rd century space captain. It throws around the sacred number 157, weird life counts like 9 and 12, and odd phrases that players try to decode like it was an ARG. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a serious mystery game, but in reality it reads like a Scientology brochure written by drunk stand-up comics. Because of that, a lot of people started linking Epsilon to everything else. The UFOs at Fort Zancudo, Mount Chiliad, and above the hippie camp, the Chiliad mural with its cracked egg symbols, even the Infinity 8 killer's obsession with numbers and reincarnation. It's believed that all of it could be touched by the same cult brain. Some fans argue Epsilon funds black projects, hides alien contact, maybe even manipulates serial killers in the background. None of this is confirmed, but the vibes line up just enough to keep you awake if you ain't sleeping. Pattern interrupt for you, Kiflom. Remember, the world is only 157 years old. Trees talk, but only some people hear them. Aliens live among us, but you will not be able to see them because you are not yet advanced. Read like that, those sound like coordinates, timestamps, or Chiliad steps. Then you step back and realize Rockstar probably wanted exactly that confusion, turning a parody cult into a lore black hole that absorbs every theory you throw at it. Rockstar has never officially connected Epsilon to the UFOs, the mural, or Infinity 8, but the way it sits in the middle of all those symbols suggests they enjoy watching you try. And after Epsilon, the next mysteries start to feel less like accidents and more like someone is quietly feeding the conspiracy machine. And once you start seeing that pattern, you notice something else Rockstar does that keeps the conspiracy machine running even when nothing supernatural is happening. Los Santos is full of doors that never open and interiors that feel way too detailed for what you actually use them for. You walk past them 1,000 times and your brain just files them away as background, but if you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks. Because this is a long one and we're going to start peeking through the glass. Take downtown. You've got those marble floor office lobbies with reception desks, security turnstiles, even little potted plants and framed artwork. You can press your face to the window, see elevators, see couches, see a whole corporate life going on in there. But story mode never gives you a reason or a way to step inside. Same with a bunch of Weasel Plaza-style apartments in Rockford Hills. You can see furnished living rooms, rugs, TVs, even coffee cups on tables. No prompt, no mission marker, just a locked door and a reminder that somebody built this. Rockford Plaza is another one. Parts of it are fully explorable during certain missions, but other wings are sealed off behind shutters, with visible shops and detailed interiors you never touch. In reality, this kind of thing explains itself as level design. Artists build modular spaces, mission designers only need some of them, and the rest just sit there looking suspicious. It's also revealed that a lot of these places quietly came to life in GTA Online. Some of those anonymous office lobbies suddenly turned into CEO office interiors. Random warehouses you drove past for years became special cargo spots. A totally normal high-end apartment shell became a purchasable penthouse with a heist planning room. That retroactively suggests Rockstar was future-proofing the map, leaving sockets to plug online content into years after single-player shipped. But not all of them got used. You still have pristine storefronts that never open. You still have apartment blocks with fully modeled hallways visible through windows. No online marker, no DLC, nothing. Fans look at those and start connecting dots that might not be there. It's believed that some of these were tied to cut heists, scrapped assassination chains for Lester, or an abandoned single-player DLC that would have pushed Michael deeper into Vinewood business drama. This would make a lot more sense in the context of Rockstar's general habit of building more world than they strictly need. When you always overbuild, the line between a deliberate tease and a dead asset gets blurry. Is that locked door a clue? Or just an artist having a good day? And out of all the locked doors in Los Santos, one building in particular turned that question into a full-blown conspiracy. The FIB headquarters, with its teased interior and its strange links to the Chiliad mural, became the place where cut content theories turned into something a lot weirder. And the FIB tower is only half of it. Because once you start looking at government spaces in GT Tavi, the map suddenly feels like it's built around a conspiracy that never quite shows up. You've got the FIB headquarters downtown, this huge glass monolith with a wrecked, half-finished interior you only properly see during story missions. And then hours away on the highway, Fort Zancudo, a fully modeled military base that you're basically punished for even looking at. Both are stuffed with details, restricted zones, keycard doors, server rooms, briefing theaters, underground tunnels, all the stuff that suggests main story content lives here. But after the heists are done, they just sit there like abandoned film sets. Fort Zancudo especially feels wrong in a way that keeps people awake at 3 a.m. It has working elevators you can't use, hangars with nothing to steal, and a whole underground level that looks like it should lead into some giant bunker. If you ain't sleeping, you've probably watched someone glitch into those areas, wander around empty corridors, and then get kicked out of bounds, which only makes it feel more like something was ripped out at the last second. Then you add the UFO. If you 100% the game and fly over Zancudo during a thunderstorm at 3 a.m., the cloaked saucer appears above the base, just hovering there with that low hum, while the soldiers on the ground completely ignore it. That one detail quietly links the government, the military, and aliens in a way the main story never does. It suggests that the state knows about extraterrestrials, maybe works with them, but no fib mission, no Steve Haynes rant, not even a Ron Jakowski meltdown ever brings it up directly. Data miners later pulled mission stubs and leftover text that mention extra fib raids, interior shootouts at Zancudo, and strange triggers tied to the mural textures. It's also revealed that some debug strings refer to Omega tracks and fib UFO files, which explains why people are convinced a bigger storyline was planned. You have code for events that never fire, and interiors that exist only for a few minutes of scripted gameplay. Because of that, it's believed that the Fib building and Fort Zancudo were once meant to connect straight into the Chiliad mystery. Players imagine a cut arc where you'd steal alien tech from Zancudo, decode it with Lester, then break into the Fib to uncover an underground base, a hidden jetpack, or at least some files that make the mural finally make sense. This would make a lot more sense in the context of how much effort went into modeling those spaces. In reality, they're glorified props, so people started looking at the map differently. If a whole conspiracy thread got chopped up, what if its pieces were scattered into everything else? The mural, the UFOs, the glyphs in the desert, maybe even one specific easy-to-miss drawing that we haven't talked about yet. And that's where Rockstar's favorite trick kicks in. When you start seeing the same weird ideas pop up in totally different places, you stop knowing what was part of one big master plan and what was just a cool leftover they refused to throw away. UFOs are the easiest example. You get the Mount Chiliad mural, the Fib building glyphs, the hippie camp, the crashed saucer in the ocean, and it's believed that all of that was tied into some giant mystery path. But then you look at Red Dead Redemption, and a century earlier, there's a flying machine in the sky, strange lights, and a whole generation of players asking if the same aliens are quietly watching both timelines. In reality, it might just be Rockstar reusing their favorite government lies, plus little green men joke in two different sandboxes. Cults work the same way. In GTA V, you have the Epsilon program scamming rich idiots in Vinewood, while a doomsday cult hides out in the desert. And it's also revealed that the Ultras cannibals are basically running their own religion of human sacrifice. Over in Red Dead, you get the Chelonians with their turtle worship, and the weird pagan altars in the woods. None of these groups officially connect, but the symbols, the robes, the language about enlightenment, all of it suggests someone in the writing room just likes reskinning the same nightmare self-help seminar for different centuries. Rockstar even does it with ghosts. You see Jolene Cranley Evans on Mount Gordo, frozen on that rock at 23-0, and people immediately start comparing her to the haunted shacks and ghost trains in Red Dead. One ghost model, one set of creepy sound design, suddenly becomes proof that the HD universe and the Old West are spiritually linked. This would make a lot more sense in the context of asset reuse than some grand paranormal canon. But if you ain't sleeping, your brain will absolutely connect those dots at 3 a.m. And that's the thing. Once you realize a glyph drawn for one mission can be pasted onto a random tunnel wall, or a creepy NPC archetype can be dropped into a new city, the original intent gets blurry. Fans start building cross-game timelines because the same face, the same symbol, or the same rumor shows up again, even when it might have been a practical choice like, "We already built this. Grab some snacks and drag it into the new project." Rockstar knows you do this. That's why they keep winking at older myths. Bigfoot started as a San Andreas rumor with no actual model. Years later, they give you a peyote trip where you literally play as Bigfoot, then a mission hunting a fake Sasquatch who insists he's just a hairy guy. It quietly explains that they heard every playground story and decided to fold it back into the lore as a half-joke, half-reward. Quick pattern interrupt for you. This doesn't just live in GTA and Red Dead. Max Payne 3, which is supposed to be a grounded shooter, hides a tiny room with cult symbols and a chained-up corpse in Sao Paulo, a full horror vignette nobody talks about. Then we snap back to Los Santos, where half-finished interiors, unused glyphs, and cryptic NPCs feel like they were built for some bigger storyline that never made it out of the planning phase. So now every reused clue feels suspicious. Is that mural just recycled art, or a shard of a cut conspiracy? And if Rockstar is carrying symbols from game to game, what else are they quietly dragging forward that we haven't recognized yet? If you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks, because this is a long one in a different way. The biggest mystery Rockstar never explains isn't a glyph or a UFO. It's the people who just stop existing between games. You see it hard when you jump from Liberty City in GTA 4 to Los Santos in GTA 5. Niko Bellic is the obvious ghost. He tears through the whole city, wipes out half the underworld, and then his fate is never clearly stated. In GTA 5, Lester has a throwaway line about an Eastern European guy making moves in Liberty City, which strongly suggests Niko survived, laid low, and refused to sell out to the fib. But we never see him, never hear his voice again, and in reality his final status is left open, so your ending choice kind of lives in your head instead of on a timeline. GTA 4's DLCs are even worse for this. Luis Lopez is the right hand of Gay Tony in the middle of the Diamond Wars, basically the playable muscle for half the city's nightlife. After the Ballad of Gay Tony, he just vanishes. No mention in GTA V, no update on whether Maisonette 9 is still standing, nothing. Johnny Klebitz at least gets an answer, and it's believed that answer is Trevor's boot to the face. Luis doesn't even get that. It feels like he should walk into a Vinewood Club cameo, but the story focus shifts to the Fib and Vinewood, and Liberty's whole cast gets left in the dark. Even smaller GTA ARV characters turn into missing persons. Roman's cab empire, Brucey's steroid-fueled brand, Packy's whole surviving McReary drama. All of that is referenced sideways at best. Packy shows up as a random heist crew member in GTA V, which confirms he got out, but it also revealed how many other people could logically still be alive and active in the background, just never pulled into frame again. Because Rockstar keeps jumping cities and eras, you get this weird effect where it feels like there should be follow-ups that never come. Yusuf Amir is building towers and buying choppers in Liberty City, talking about expanding. And then Los Santos is full of sleazy developers who are somehow not Yusuf. That gap explains why fans started building elaborate timelines and fate charts, trying to track who'd be what age, who might have flipped to the fib, who could secretly be hiding under a new name in Blaine County. And Rockstar knows you're doing this. GTA Viv constantly name drops Liberty City, Alderney, Old Scores, and that mess up north, but always just short of a full update on everyone left behind. It's like they want the HD universe to feel continuous without ever locking the lore down. Out of all these unresolved fates, One stands out as almost deliberately taunting. Before Gita V even starts, Michael Townley is officially dead, buried in Ludendorff, mourned by a family that moves to Los Santos under witness protection. The thing is, that grave isn't his. So if the game opens on a fake corpse, how many other people in this world might be walking around with the wrong name and the right enemies? So that fake corpse in Ludendorff? That's not just a twist for Trevor. That's Rockstar telling you right from the first mission that the official story is a prop. You watch Michael Townley die, you see the grave with his name on it, and the camera lingers like it wants you to lock that image in your head before it quietly tears it apart. During the prologue, Michael gets shot, Dave Norton gets his heroic headline, and Brad gets dumped into the ground under the wrong name. On paper it's clean. A big bust for infib nobody, a dead career criminal, and a loose end supposedly rotting in federal prison. In reality, that whole scene is a business transaction. Michael sells out his own crew, Dave sells a lie to his bosses, and the grave in North Yankton becomes physical evidence of a story that never happened. By the time you're in Los Santos, that deal has turned into a lifestyle. Witness protection, a new name, a Vinewood-adjacent mansion, therapy, kids who only know him as Michael De Santa. Michael is literally living inside paperwork. His driver's license, his mortgage, his whole identity is built on Dave's report. It's also revealed that even Amanda and the kids don't know the full truth. They just know something went down before the move, which explains why the whole family feels like it's built on resentment and half-truths. The game slowly lets that deception leak. You get those early throwaway lines about the old days. Lester hinting that Michael didn't just retire. And then Trevor finally seeing that Ludendorff news clip. Because you've been playing as Michael, you've accepted his version by default. But the second Trevor realizes that grave is wrong, your perspective snaps. Michael stops being the retired bank robber trying to go straight and turns into the guy who rewrote reality and left his best friend grieving over the wrong body for almost a decade. This would make a lot more sense in the context of how Rockstar usually tells stories. They love partial truths and characters who lie to themselves. Nico's war stories in GTA IV, the contradictory rumors about Catalina, even radio hosts spinning events you just caused into something completely different. It's believed that half the fun for the writers is watching players piece together what actually happened from dialogue, mission setups, and background details that only click in hindsight. Michael's fake death basically trains you to stop trusting anything labeled official. Life Invader news reports, Weasel news segments, fib briefings, even character backstories start to feel like PR instead of history. If you ain't sleeping, you start asking why Brad's file doesn't match his fate, why certain disappearances are brushed off, why some conspiracies, like Mount Chiliad, are mocked on TV while the game quietly hides UFOs in the sky. So if Michael can walk around under a false name with a fake grave and a federal blessing, how many other facts in GTA lore are just in-universe propaganda you've been accepting at face value? And what happens when you start treating every newspaper clipping and police report like it's lying to you on purpose? So once you start treating every official document as propaganda, you notice something else. The loudest liars in GTA V are the ones talking directly into your car speakers. Weasel News, the talk shows, the fake internet sites you scroll on your in-game phone, all of them are constantly reporting on the chaos you just caused. But in reality, they're not trying to inform you. They're trying to sell a story. You blow up a convoy during a heist, and Weasel calls it a terror incident, possibly linked to foreign extremists, because saying 3 idiots in masks robbed an armored truck for fun and mortgage payments doesn't fit the political narrative. When Michael crashes the Life Invader presentation, the coverage instantly shifts away from Jay Norris selling user data and straight into security theater and fear. which explains why nobody in Los Santos ever talks about what Life Invader was actually doing. It's also revealed that a lot of mission outcomes get quietly rewritten by the media. A gang shootout you barely survive turns into a police operation gone wrong, with no mention of Fib involvement, no mention of Devin Weston, just a vague line about ongoing investigations. When you assassinate targets for Lester, radio hosts frame it as random market shocks, while the Bossack site spins convenient analyst chatter that nudges you toward certain stocks. The game tells you out loud that markets are manipulated, and then invites you to manipulate them yourself. Talk radio is even worse. Hosts like Laszlo and the conservative pundits will mention events you played, but only as ammo for culture war rants or corporate talking points. A freeway gunfight becomes proof that the city needs more privatized security, which just happens to benefit groups like Merryweather. A corrupt Fib raid gets described as heroic agents putting their lives on the line, even when you watch Steve Haynes execute witnesses during that same mission. Because of that, you can't really treat any one in-game source as the truth. You end up triangulating between what you saw in the mission, what Weasel says, what some snarky bleeder post suggests, and what a throwaway NPC line mutters on the sidewalk after. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a conspiracy thriller, but Rockstar just hides it inside a sandbox, where you're usually too busy driving into traffic to notice. And if you ain't sleeping, the really fun part is that some of the best mystery clues are buried in those background channels. A random talk radio caller mentions strange lights over Chiliad months before most players ever saw a UFO. A tiny news blurb about unexplained disappearances near Raton Canyon quietly ties in to the Infinity Killer clues. Even the in-game web pages for cults and doomsday groups drop symbols that match the glyphs on Mount Chiliad, but Rockstar never confirms if that's intentional or just shared art assets. Pattern interrupt for you. Imagine a future Gita where you literally play as a conspiracy podcaster, driving around, recording audio, connecting dots between government contracts, UFO sightings, and celebrity deaths. You'd sit in a crappy apartment, edit tapes, and rant about Weasel News lying to everyone. But when you think about it, you're already doing that. You're screenshotting murals, replaying missions to catch one line of dialogue, and fact-checking in-game news against what you just did 5 minutes ago. Grab some snacks, because as you move deeper into Jita's unsolved mysteries, you basically become the in-universe crackpot trying to prove the game's own media wrong. At some point, if you ain't sleeping, you stop playing Jita V and you start doing research. You go from robbing banks to opening 12 tabs about a chalk drawing on a mountain. The Chiliad mystery community basically turned Los Santos into a crime scene. You had dedicated forums with megathreads that ran for hundreds of pages, people on Discord timing UFO spawns down to the in-game minute, and wikis that read less like Easter egg guides and more like FBI case files. Players made spreadsheets tracking weather, time of day, player outfit, mission progress, even which radio station was on during sightings, because someone suggested that might matter once, and nobody wanted to miss the one weird variable. Map overlays became their own subculture. People traced the Mount Chiliad mural, then stretched it over the in-game map, the seafloor, even the single-player UFO flight paths. It's also revealed that some users were exporting satellite-style screenshots from Rockstar Editor just to line up glyphs with power lines and train tracks. In reality, half of it looked like conspiracy corkboards. But that was the point. Inside those spaces, you basically had social classes. Theory leaders were the people who wrote 10-page posts, complete with diagrams and citations to obscure NPC dialogue. Skeptics hung around poking holes in everything, reminding everyone that data miners hadn't found a jetpack script, or that some textures were obviously cut content. Then you had the hoaxers, the ones who faked screenshots of jetpacks in the bunker or edited in extra glyphs, and for about 12 hours the whole community would melt down before someone proved the JPEG was lying. The tension was always the same. Everyone said they wanted an answer, but they also liked the chase. If Rockstar had tweeted a clean explanation in 2014, half these people would have lost their new hobby overnight. Instead, you get these waves where a breakthrough reignites everything. Someone finally confirms the exact UFO spawn conditions over Chiliad during the storm. Or a new glyph texture gets noticed on a tunnel wall years after release, and it's believed that this is the missing piece that will unlock the mural. Rockstar's silence is what really locked this in. Because they refused to explain the mural, or the glyphs, or why some UFOs are just static models, the community slowly became the authority by default. Fan-made flowcharts of step-by-step Chiliad progress started feeling more real than anything in the official strategy guide. People would quote a famous forum post like it was canon, then dismiss an actual Rockstar comment as trolling or misdirection. This would make a lot more sense in the context of an official ARG, where a studio plans clues and drip feeds answers. But here, players basically reverse-engineered an ARG out of a half-finished mystery and some leftover textures. So you have to ask, did Rockstar quietly anticipate this level of organized investigation? Or did the fans accidentally turn GTA V into an alternate reality game Rockstar never meant to run? So this is where you get that weird overlap. Players treat GTA V like an ARG, but Rockstar acts like they didn't sign up for that job. An ARG, or alternate reality game, is usually very official. A studio sets up coordinated clues, real websites, phone numbers, even live events. You get puzzles that unlock in stages, and the devs quietly confirm progress with updates or new drops, so the community knows when they're on the right track. It's believed that games like Halo 2's I Love Bees or Valve's Portal 2 ARG worked exactly like this, with planned endpoints and a clear you solved it moment. Rockstar borrows some of that language, but then just walks away. They use in-game websites like Chiliad Mystery Guru, Epsilon's insane donation pages, and Life Invader posts that feel like they're hiding something. You also get cryptic messages painted on Mount Chiliad, UFO spawn conditions tied to 100% completion, and hidden glyphs on random rocks in the desert. But after all that, Rockstar almost never steps in outside the game to say, yeah, you're done, or you missed a step. No countdowns, no DevRun leaderboards, no official puzzle recaps. Even when they flirt with the line, they don't cross it. During the Mount Chiliad hunt, they patched in more UFO assets and extra conditions, but it's also revealed that they never released an official breakdown of the mural or what each symbol means. The Infinite 8 Killer has a full set of cryptic notes and bodies, but no mission trigger, no achievement, no tweet saying, "Nice work, you found him." Bigfoot started as a myth in San Andreas, then came back in GTA V with peyote hallucinations and that weird Sasquatch mission. But Rockstar still avoided a neat ARG-style "this mystery is now closed" statement. Pattern interrupt for you. Other studios love to brag when you crack their ARG. They'll drop trailers early, send out physical prizes, or do a victory lap blog post explaining every puzzle. Rockstar does the opposite. They stay mostly silent, let rumors spiral, and quietly fold fan theories back into later games. In reality, that silence might be the most deliberate part. What this creates is a liminal space. These mysteries are way too structured to be random Easter eggs someone forgot to delete. But they're also not formal ARGs with a designed, public endpoint. The game explains just enough to keep you thinking, but not enough to tell you when to stop. If you ain't sleeping, you can sit on Mount Chiliad at 3 a.m., watching a lowers UFO and still wonder if you missed a secret elevator. Rockstar's choice to never fully gamify the hunt is like their secret sauce. Because they don't declare a winner, the mystery never officially ends. Players keep digging, new people rediscover old clues, and every solved theory still has room for doubt. Grab some snacks, because next we're going into how that silence lets whole urban legends form around characters that barely even speak. And if you ain't sleeping yet, that silence gets way louder once you go back to where it all started, Mount Chiliad. Because even after people spawned every UFO, forced every weather state, and ripped the game files apart, some of the markings up there still don't add up. Everyone knows the big mural in the cable car station, but around it you've got these weird extra pieces that never really pay off. There's the faint eye-shaped scrawl on the opposite wall that looks like a budget Illuminati logo. Random arrows scratched into the concrete pointing at nothing in particular, and the tiny lightning bolt style etchings on the railings that don't match any other graffiti set in the game. Down on the hiking paths you get those crudely painted X symbols on rocks, and the little stick figure with its arms raised, almost like it's worshipping something that never actually appears. Players tried to tie all of this to events we already know. The colored X's on the mural line up with UFO spawns, but the extra arrows near the station doors don't trigger anything, even if you stand there at 3 am in a thunderstorm wearing the stupid tinfoil hat. Some symbols on the mountain's north face only show up under certain lighting, which suggested a hidden step, but no one has ever found a script that reacts to them. Data miners eventually pulled out unused textures that made it worse. It's also revealed that there are alternate versions of the Chiliad mural, with slightly different icon placements. A texture for a crude alien face that never appears in the world, and a scratched eye wordmark that looks designed to sit on a rock, but has no coordinates. In reality, these files have no mission hooks, no triggers, no cutscene calls. They just sit in the archives like props for a quest that either got deleted or never left the whiteboard. Because of that, the community went full conspiracy mode. People tracked moon phases, thinking the mural might only fully activate on a certain in-game lunar cycle. Others swore that doing a perfect no-damage climb, or parachuting through the exact center of the mural triangle, would spawn a final UFO. It's believed that certain weather seeds combined with specific player outfits might change the glyph glow. None of it ever produced consistent, repeatable results. You'd get one guy with a grainy capture card claiming success, and 50 others standing on the same pixel getting absolutely nothing. Over time, some players flipped the theory. Instead of assuming the mystery was unfinished by accident, they started seeing these orphan glyphs and textures as deliberate dead ends. Rockstar gives you just enough pattern to feel like a genius, then sprinkles in noise so you can never actually 100% the secret. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a studio that loves watching people argue about fake stock markets and radio commercials. So you end up with this uncomfortable question: was Mount Chiliad ever meant to be solved at all? Or was the real experiment seeing how long players would keep inventing meaning for symbols that might never have any? And if that's true, what does it say about the other quiet weirdos in Los Santos that nobody's finished dissecting yet? So that's the thing sitting under all of this. You're not just chasing answers, you're chasing patterns. Your brain sees a mural, a glyph, a weird radio line at 3 a.m., and it starts stitching a story together, because Los Santos feels close enough to real that it tricks you into treating it like a real place with real secrets. In reality, that's kind of what makes Tavi such a good bedtime game. If you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks, because this is a long one in your head even when the credits are over. You start connecting Mount Chiliad to the UFOs, to the altruist camp, to the Infinity 8 killer messages on the rocks, and none of that is officially confirmed. But it feels like it should be. The world is so dense that your pattern-seeking instincts just refuse to shut off. Psychologists would say you're hardwired to do this because your brain hates loose threads. Rockstar builds a giant fake city full of loose threads. That's the trick. The main story ends, Michael retires, Franklin buys a house, Trevor keeps being Trevor, But the game doesn't really stop because the mysteries never formally roll credits. You can turn off the console and still be thinking about that strange man painting in Red Dead, or the ghost on Mount Gordo in GTA V. That's how you get a game afterlife. Years after release, people are still combing the ocean floor for cut UFO triggers and arguing about whether Chiliad ever had a final step. It's also revealed that some glyph textures exist in the files with no mission attached, which suggests cut content, but it also works like a haunted attic for the lore community. Even the junk data becomes sacred because it might be the missing piece. For a lot of players, the comfort isn't in finally solving anything, it's in the ritual. Loading into an old save, flying up to Chiliad during a thunderstorm, checking if anything changed after the latest patch, posting a blurry screenshot that you're 60% sure is just a cloud. The search itself becomes the hobby. Theorizing, arguing, sharing half-baked charts in a Discord at 2 a.m. is the point. Completionists hate this. They want the checklist to hit 100% and the mysteries to line up in a neat wiki page. Rockstar almost never gives them that. They acknowledge Bigfoot, they play with the myth, but they don't drop a big document that explains who the Infinite 8 killer really was, or what every symbol means. It's believed that this refusal is deliberate because it keeps the campfire stories burning. So you get this weird comfort and confusion. The mystery never dies, which means the world never fully dies either. And that raises the real question. If Rockstar posted an official mystery compendium tomorrow that explained Chiliad, the UFOs, the strange man, all of it, would you actually want them to? Or would that kill the exact thing that's keeping you coming back? And the funny part is, on the rare nights when Rockstar does actually talk, they somehow make it worse. You'll get these interviews where a designer is asked straight up about Mount Chiliad, or the Infinite 8 killer, and they just kind of smile and say things like, "We love that players are still looking," or "It's believed that not everything needs an answer." They acknowledge the hunt. They nod at specific theories without naming them, but they never say, "Yes, this is real," or "No, you're wasting your time." So the speculation doesn't die, it just respawns with armor. Bigfoot is the clearest example. In San Andreas, players were convinced they'd seen him in the woods, even though in reality there was no model, no proper mission, nothing. Rockstar staff joked about it in interviews, acting surprised people believed it, but they never fully shut it down. Then GTA V comes out, and it's also revealed that not only do you get an entire peyote mission where you literally play as Bigfoot, you later get a mission in online that reveals the Bigfoot guy is actually just a costume fraud. Except, maybe not, because the game also hints at a real, possibly supernatural creature behind it. So the answer to the myth is basically yes, no, and maybe, all at once. They do this with updates too. A patch will quietly change a glyph near Chiliad, or adjust a UFO's spawn condition, without anything in the patch notes. Some textures get cleaned up, some triggers move a few in game minutes earlier or later, and suddenly people think a whole new layer has been unlocked. Data miners dig around after every DLC because one new symbol on a wall in Grapeseed suggests that a cut chain of events might have been reconnected. Half the time, it's probably just an art pass. The other half, it feels like someone at Rockstar is poking the ant hill to see what happens. And you can tell they understand the value of that. Rockstar clearly knows this is a long one in terms of community obsession, and instead of dropping a dry blog post that explains every glyph, they choose playful engagement. They answer with jokes, with half-truths, with missions that reference the myth while refusing to pin it down. If you ain't sleeping, you start to see a pattern. They like being the dungeon master who smiles when you guess the twist, but never flips over the notes. Now, pattern interrupt for a second. Imagine Rockstar does a brutally honest Q&A stream. No marketing filter, just a lead designer with a spreadsheet titled Stuff We Cut and Forgot About. They go down the list. This mural was a joke. That UFO was just to fill empty sky. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a mission we canceled in 2012. And by the end of it, you know exactly which mysteries matter and which ones were accidents. Clean, clinical, dead. But that's not the world you live in. Instead, you get winks, patches that act like ghost stories, and interviews that answer questions by raising 3 more. And the real twist is that this strategy doesn't just affect random Easter eggs. It bleeds into how you read the actual lore of characters and institutions too. Because once you realize they're willing to play with you at that level, you start wondering which serious story beats might secretly be part of the same game. And Gita Online is where that feeling really gets weaponized. Because once you go multiplayer, the world doesn't just sit there as a finished puzzle anymore. It keeps mutating around you. From the very start, Rockstar begins dropping online content that feels like it was ripped straight out of late-night Chiliad theory threads. You get the Fort Zancudo UFO event that only appears under specific weather and time conditions. You get the bunker network that suggests the military's been digging under Blaine County for years. You get the doomsday heist facilities carved into mountainsides with giant blast doors you never saw in story mode. Later updates stack on the IAA-style underground bases, secret missile silos, agency safe houses, and even weirder UFO flyovers during Halloween. And each one quietly says, yeah, you were right to think something was under this map. The funny part is how often these additions nod at Chiliad and then pull back before they actually connect anything. The Doomsday Heist literally has you racing through tunnels under the mountain and past murals and glyphs that look like the old conspiracy symbols, but nobody stops to say, this is what the Mount Chiliad mural meant. The UFO business missions have you stealing alien eggs out of labs that feel like Humane Labs 2.0, but no scientist explains where the egg came from. It's also revealed that the gun-running bunkers use the same kind of concrete and signage you see around the Chiliad cable car station, which suggests the same contractor or agency, but the game just treats it as background dressing while you grind research. And that's the tension with online in general. On one side, you've got the loud, fast gameplay loop where you're running Cayo Perico for the 50th time because you want a new car. On the other side, you've got people parking a rusty Rebel in the middle of the desert at 3 a.m. game time, staring at the sky for a UFO spawn. If you ain't sleeping, you've probably done both. The design keeps pushing you toward efficiency and payouts. But the mystery hunting culture lives in the gaps between jobs. During that dead air and free roam where someone notices a new hatch, a strange interior, or a glyph that wasn't there before. Because online is a living game, the map turns into a moving target. New updates can literally paint over old weirdness, lock interiors, or move props, which makes it hard to know what's cut content and what's a breadcrumb. At the same time, every major DLC brings at least one new what is that moment, a fresh UFO pattern, a hidden room in a facility, a random mural in a heist prep area that looks way too designed to be nothing. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a dev team quietly testing how much mystery you'll chase while still buying shark cards. In reality, it's believed that Gita Online might be Rockstar's lab for this whole experiment. How many secrets can you scatter before people stop running missions and just start ghost hunting full time? And the real question is, are they about to push that even further in the next game? Or have we already hit the limit of how much mystery a living world can handle before it breaks? And that's where the jetpack comes crashing back into the story. After years of people staring at a mural and licking Chiliad glyphs for clues, Rockstar finally drops the Doomsday Heist in Gita Online. Suddenly you're not a broke repo guy anymore. You're buying underground facilities, working with Lester out of secret bases, and trying to stop an AI apocalypse that feels like every Paranoid Talk Radio segment in GTA V got stitched into one mission chain. It's spy movie cosplay with a budget, And the game just leans all the way into those conspiracy aesthetics people had been projecting onto Chiliad from day one. During Doomsday, you're raiding missile silos, fighting paramilitary goons in matching jumpsuits, and dealing with Avon Hertz and his pet AI, Clifford, who talk like they were raised on Doomsday forums. Every objective explains another part of this over-the-top threat: rogue tech billionaire, corrupted intelligence networks, Doomsday devices under San Andreas. It's believed that this was Rockstar finally saying, "Okay, you want aliens, secret bunkers, and end-of-the-world stakes? Fine, here of all of it at once." And buried in that chaos is the thing Chiliad hunters wouldn't shut up about: the jetpack. In Doomsday's Act 3, you literally steal a jetpack-style vehicle from a hidden government facility, and after you beat the heist, you can just buy it from Warstock like it's a slightly more expensive dirt bike. Years of grainy YouTube theories, and the answer is, it's in the catalog now. Grab some snacks and grind some setups. So does that feel like a payoff to the Chiliad mural, or just a very expensive wink? On one hand, the visual language is obvious. The jetpack sits on a mountaintop platform. It's also revealed that the in-game files literally call it jetpack. And the whole mission is framed like you finally broke into the kind of black site people imagined under Chiliad. On the other hand, none of this is tied to Michael, Franklin, or Trevor. Story mode never updates. The mural doesn't change. Single-player Chiliad just sits there, frozen in 2013, while online runs off to fight Skynet. Some players look at that and say this would make a lot more sense in the context of Chiliad always being a teaser for future online content. They point out that UFOs, the altruist cult, and all the conspiracy radio chatter already suggested a bigger, unseen world, so Doomsday just finally opens the door. Others see it as Rockstar doing a separate joke. You people wanted a jetpack so badly we built an entire cartoon supervillain plot around it, and still refused to patch your precious mural. And that contrast is the pattern interrupt here. The original Chiliad hunt is quiet, eerie, almost grounded. You're hiking up a lonely mountain at 3 a.m., listening to wind and coyotes, waiting for a UFO that might not spawn. Doomsday is you in a golden jetpack, firing homing missiles while an AI screams about global annihilation. It's still the same map, the same sky, but in reality it feels like two different universes layered on top of each other. And that split is exactly where the next set of mysteries starts to grow. You've got UFOs sitting on top of Mount Chiliad like it's 2013, and then you've got jetpacks and orbital cannons a few miles south. If you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks, because this is a long one, and now we've got to ask the question that breaks people's brains at 4 a.m. Are Jita and Red Dead actually in the same universe, just on different pages of the calendar? On the surface, they're totally separate. One is horse theft, one is auto theft. But once you start looking at brands and names, stuff stops lining up so clean. You see the same fake corporations drifting across centuries, like the way the Red Dead universe has early versions of things that feel suspiciously similar to Taz. There's the classic example of the cigarette and tonic-style ads in Red Dead that match up with the sleazy marketing tone of brands like Sprunk and Redwood in Jita, which suggests Rockstar keeps one big internal Bible of fake companies and just time shifts them. Then you get surnames like Marston and Martin, or the McFarlanes and the McRearys, and people start asking if these are distant relatives or just Rockstar reusing sounds they like because it's funny. This would make a lot more sense in the context of one character who cuts across everything: the Strange Man. In Red Dead Redemption, he's that guy in the bowler hat who knows way too much about John Marston's past, stands in impossible places, and walks away from being shot in the head like it's nothing. In Red Dead 2, his cabin literally erases itself when you look away. It's believed that this dude isn't just a ghost or the devil, but an anchor point for a bigger multiverse idea, some kind of observer who can step between games and timelines. Then players notice that in GTA V, You've got NPCs who look a little too close to him, weird paintings and symbols that echo his vibe, and that mural culture around Chiliad that feels like the same cosmic joke. It's also revealed that some textures in GTA's files share naming conventions with Red Dead assets, which doesn't prove anything, but it explains why conspiracy people stay up late, drawing lines between them like a detective who forgot to clock out. Rockstar's official stance is basically silence. When they do talk, they treat each series as its own satire sandbox. Red Dead is their tragic western, Gutta is their modern media circus, and in reality they only cross them when it's funny, like joking radio ads about frontier history or achievement names that reference old games. But fans don't need permission. They map train companies from 1911 to 2013, compare cult symbols, and act like the strange man is standing just off-screen in every cutscene, waiting. The lack of a clear canon actually keeps the door wide open. If Rockstar came out tomorrow and said, "No, it's all separate," would that kill half the fun? Or is the mystery way better when nobody's allowed to put a final label on it? And that idea that some things are better when nobody can stamp them as canon is where Rockstar gets really mean with you. Because it's not just symbols and murals they leave hanging, it's people, it's feelings, it's the stuff that, in reality, should probably get fixed, but just doesn't. Michael DeSanta is the easiest one to see. He pulls off the big score, he survives multiple shootouts, he gets his movie deal, and you'd think that means his family arc should wrap up clean. But Amanda is still restless, Tracy is still chasing clout, Jimmy is still drifting. The game suggests they're better after therapy and chaos, but you never get a scene where his guilt about faking his death is actually resolved. Michael learns to live with the lie instead of undoing it. The emotional heist never pays out. Trevor Phillips is even harsher. You're shown his abandonment trauma with Mrs. Phillips. It's also revealed that he lost his brother Ryan before the game, and you watch him cling to any scrap of loyalty like it's oxygen. But the story never gives him a real moment of closure with Michael or with his past. Depending on your ending, he either dies furious or survives furious. The wound is the point. Rockstar doesn't heal it, because a healed Trevor stops being Trevor. Franklin Clinton is different. Franklin's whole thing is searching for purpose. He wants out of the repo life with Simeon. He wants more than Lamar's small-time chaos, and he keeps getting adopted by older, broken men. By the time you hit the last choice, he's rich but spiritually unemployed. The game never shows him finding a healthy path. It just shows 3 flavors of compromise. If you ain't sleeping, you can sit there and imagine Franklin 10 years later, staring at a mansion he doesn't know how to live in. And it's not just the protagonists. Random encounters are full of people who feel like they should get a follow-up. Tanya and JB might clean up for a bit during the towing missions, but you never see if they actually stay sober. The hitchhiking celebrity stalker disappears after you drop him off. The doomsday prepper ranting on the side of the road is either right or wrong, and you never find out which. Los Santos is packed with pilot episodes that never got their second episode. Pattern interrupt for you. Imagine GTA V ending with a big "Where Are They Now" montage. Text on screen. Tanya and JB, 5 years sober, new towing yard. Beverly, sued into oblivion. Denise, running a successful wellness brand. Even Trevor, doing anger management podcasts. It would wrap everything up, give you closure, and it would feel completely wrong. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a cheesy sitcom than a Rockstar game. It's believed that this commitment to messy, unresolved lives is part of their realism. People don't get full explanations or neat arcs. They just keep going. Or they don't. The structural mysteries, like Mount Chiliad, mirror the emotional ones. They look solvable. They invite you to try. But they stay just out of reach. And as you move deeper into the side stories and institutional stuff, that unfinished feeling only gets louder. As that unfinished feeling gets louder, you start grabbing at anything that talks back to you. And in GTA V, the world literally talks back. Because the dialogue is so dense that even throwaway lines start to sound like evidence if you ain't sleeping. You hear it with Franklin all the time. Early on, he jokes about aliens and spaceships when Lamar is rambling, and people clip that as a Mount Chiliad hint, like Franklin secretly knows about the UFOs you only see after 100%. Michael's therapist sessions are the same thing. When he mentions strange dreams, abductions, or feeling like the world is fake, it's believed that those lines connect to the single-player peyote trip where he actually gets abducted. In reality, it's just a guy having a midlife crisis. But when the game later gives you literal aliens, the old dialogue suddenly feels like a breadcrumb. NPC chatter feeds this even harder. Chiliad hikers talk about lights in the sky. Cult members mutter about ascending and the craft. A random altruist saying, "They watch from above" sounds like pure UFO lore when you've spent 3 nights on YouTube watching Chiliad conspiracy videos. The line was probably written as generic cult nonsense. But repetition makes it feel important. Because you keep hearing the same themes. Ascension. Beams. The mountain. The eye. Rockstar leans into repeated phrases a lot. Life Invader employees keep complaining about data, surveillance, and the cloud during ambient conversations, and that repetition explains the satire, but it also makes players think every tech buzzword is part of a bigger arc. The Epsilon program is built on this too. You hear Kiflam so often that people started counting the uses, trying to match it to glyph numbers and Chiliad mural segments, like the script itself was a cipher. Because this is a long one, players don't just listen, they archive. People record every cutscene, every random street conversation, then transcribe them and throw them into spreadsheets. They search for words like mountain, egg, truth, trying to see if one side mission line from a drunk Vinewood actor secretly connects to a glyph texture nobody has triggered. The dialogue becomes a database, and once you treat it like data, you start seeing patterns even when they're not there. It's also revealed that Rockstar's writers are working on a massive schedule across multiple teams, trying to fill a huge open world with life. They're not in a bunker coordinating every NPC insult with a master mystery plan. One writer adds a UFO joke because it's funny, another adds a cult line because it fits the scene, and 6 months later someone else is drawing red strings between them on a forum. False positives are baked into a world this dense. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a perfectly controlled puzzle box, but GTA V isn't that. It's messy, layered, and loud. So the real question becomes, in a world this talkative, how can you ever be sure which lines are intentional signals and which are just noise that happen to sound like a clue? So players start doing what Rockstar never admits they want you to do. You become your own little signal analyst, trying to separate the real threads from the static. You're half asleep on the couch, if you ain't sleeping yet, and you're mentally running a conspiracy board on a game from 2013. The first filter people use is repetition. One weird glyph on a wall is probably an artist having fun. The same symbol on Mount Chiliad, then again in a tunnel, then again on a random mural in Grapeseed, that suddenly feels intentional. Because Rockstar almost never reuses unique assets by accident. The Bigfoot myth in San Andreas worked like this in reverse. Everyone swore they saw him, but in reality, data miners tore the game apart and found nothing. No model, no script, no fur. That silence in the files was its own kind of answer. Cross-referencing is the next step. Players notice the Mount Chiliad mural, then remember the Fib UFO at 3 a.m. In a thunderstorm, then spot alien murals in single player and in online. When the same idea shows up across different maps, different DLCs, even different games like Red Dead Strange Man, it's believed that this is Rockstar speaking in a pattern, not just recycling a texture to save time. The community basically builds a shared database of Rockstarisms and uses that as a lie detector. Then you've got developer history. People look back at how San Andreas hid the jetpack, or how Red Dead buried the strange man and say, if they did that before, they do this now. A weird shack with a bloody interior stops being just a prop once you remember the Infinity 8 killer clues from GTA 4. Past behavior explains current paranoia. Data mining is where it gets clinical. Someone posts a theory about a second Chiliad step, and within days, another player is in the files, finding unused UFO scripts, orphan triggers, or mystery textures that never spawn in normal play. Unused alien bunker doors, extra glyphs, half-finished mission headers. All of that suggests the game was once planning more than you can actually activate. Cut content becomes the ghost of a mystery that almost existed, but logic only gets you so far, because this is still a social game. A theory with weak evidence can explode overnight if a big creator covers it, or a subreddit locks it in as the explanation. The original Bigfoot myth started from blurry screenshots and campfire stories, and Rockstar later folded it back into canon with peyote missions in Tavi. Some of the most beloved legends were born from someone squinting at pixels at 3 a.m. and refusing to log off. To show you how fragile this is, imagine this. The number of steps up Mount Chiliad, the price of a sprunk from a vending machine, and the exact time the Vinewood sign lights turn on all match a real-world date. That date lines up with the moon phase that looks like the eye in the mural. Add one NPC line about corporate cycles near a Life Invader office, and suddenly you've got a sprunk lunar sacrifice update theory that sounds weirdly plausible if you say it with confidence. Grab some snacks, because framed right, even random noise starts to feel like design. And once you see how easy it is to fake a pattern, you start asking a darker question. How many of the mysteries you already believe are built on the same kind of beautiful accident? So when you start wondering how many mysteries are just beautiful accidents, you kind of have to circle back to the one that feels the most disturbingly deliberate, the Infinite 8 killer. If you ain't sleeping, grab some snacks, because this is a long one inside the long one. The basics you already know, but they hit different when you line them up. You've got 8 confirmed victims, all hinted at through those numbered writings on rocks and tunnels. The phrases count up and down, suggesting an order, and they talk about drowning, cycles, and betrayal. The bodies were dumped off the coast, in deep water that you can actually dive to, and the implied timeline stretches back years before the events of GTA V. Like Los Santos has been sitting on a serial killer story the news just never bothered to cover. What makes it worse is how much we still don't know. The killer's identity is never revealed, even though it's believed that the notes sound like one person talking directly to you. We don't know the real motive, beyond some vague obsession with infinity and cleansing. We don't know how they avoided detection when they're leaving creepy poetry basically on public hiking routes. And we don't know what happened to them. Did they die, get locked up under a fake name? Or are they just another background NPC you walk past during a triathlon? Because Rockstar never closes the file, people started building newer and weirder theories. Some players tie the Infinite 8 to the Mount Chiliad mural, saying the 8 victims match the 8 symbols around the eye. Others think the killer is connected to side content like the altruist camp, because the cult also lives in the hills, talks about sacrifice, and has that same unhinged manifesto energy. It's also revealed that a few online updates added more ocean props and wrecks, which for some people suggest the case was meant to expand, while others argue it's just recycled assets and everyone's losing it. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a normal game puzzle if aliens showed up or a magic glyph lit the way to a bunker. But the Infinite 8 stuff stays painfully grounded. It's just rocks, handwriting, coordinates, and corpses in the dark. In reality, it feels closer to watching a true crime video about an unsolved coastal killer than hunting an Easter egg in a satire game, and that's why it sticks with you way longer than a UFO flyby. So you're left with this cold, ugly story that never quite clicks. Do they ever plan to quietly answer it? Maybe in some future GTA radio show, or a background news ticker? Or have they already decided this one stays frozen forever, buried under the waves with victim number 8? And the weird part is, some of the stories that do get answers don't even start with Rockstar. They start with you. Or, more accurately, with that one guy on a forum at 3 a.m. who decides to lie to everyone for fun. Player hoaxes are basically their own sub-genre of GTA lore. During the Mount Chiliad hunt, you had fake screenshots showing a hidden hatch opening if you parked 3 different colored supercars on the mural at exactly 3:33 a.m. in a thunderstorm. People edited in new glyphs, extra UFOs, even a so-called jetpack room under the mountain. A lot of these were just Photoshop jobs with motion blur and low bitrate slapped on, so it looked like a cursed capture card from 2013. Some of them got debunked in hours because someone else tried to replicate it on PC and nothing happened. Others lingered for years. The Bigfoot phone number hoax, the call this number and you'll trigger a secret mission thing, kept getting reposted long after it was proven fake, until it's believed that half the casual player base still thinks they just dialed it wrong. In reality, a lot of myths end up like that, indistinguishable from genuine cut content when you're just hearing it in a party chat. Motivations are all over the place. You have straight up trolls who just want to waste people's time, social experiment guys who post a fake Chiliad solution to see how fast YouTubers copy it, and then the weirdly sincere ones who think they're adding to the mystery culture. That last group treats GTA V like a community-written creepypasta, where if Rockstar won't give you a new glyph, you just paint one yourself and see who bites. Rockstar's response to most of this is nothing. No blog post, no hard denial, just silence. That non-response actually explains why some hoaxes grow so big, because when the devs never step in, a well-made fake can sit right next to a real Easter egg and feel just as official. If you ain't sleeping in your deep-diving wikis, you'll see fan theories quoted with the same confidence as datamine scripts. Quick pattern interrupt. If you wanted to stage a convincing hoax in GTA V tomorrow, you absolutely could. You pick a visually noisy area, like the Chiliad Tunnel or the Altruist Camp. You mod in a tiny new symbol or NPC. Record at night in the rain. Lower the resolution. Talk over it like you're shocked but trying to stay calm. And accidentally cut right before anything conclusive happens. Upload. Title it like you don't want attention. And wait. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a prank channel. But in a mystery-obsessed community, it turns into fake archaeology. The important part is drawing a line between playful fiction and claiming you found something real. Because once a hoax hardens into lore, it starts warping how people read the actual clues Rockstar did leave. And that's where the next set of mysteries gets even messier. And once it gets messy like that, you run into the weirdest part of all this. Rockstar almost never steps in to clean it up. They just let the hoaxes harden, let the half-truths spread, and watch while you argue about glyphs painted on a mountain from 2013. On the creative side, that actually fits them a little too well. Gitafi is a world where the news lies, the cops lie, and even your friends lie about being dead. So it kind of tracks that the game itself keeps lying by omission. Leaving the Mount Chiliad mural unexplained preserves that feeling that the system is bigger than you, that you're poking at some rigged conspiracy board you'll never fully solve. Because in reality, that's exactly how Los Santos treats you in every mission anyway. It also keeps you coming back. If you ain't sleeping and you're still driving up that mountain at 3 a.m., looking for a fourth UFO that probably doesn't exist, Rockstar has basically built a perpetual motion machine out of your curiosity. The same thing happened back in San Andreas with Bigfoot. The model wasn't actually in the game, but the myth was so strong that it's believed that Rockstar later canonized it on purpose in GTA V, turning an urban legend into an official side mission. They don't have to say anything, they just fold your obsession back into the satire. Then you've got the boring, practical side that explains a lot of the gaps. A bunch of those Chiliad-style glyphs and textures in GTA V's files look like they were supposed to hook into something that got cut when priorities changed. Missions get dropped, scripts get rewritten, DLC plans move around, and suddenly you have a strange man painting in Red Dead, or an Infinite 8 scribble in GTA that feels like step 3 of a puzzle, where steps 1 and 2 are sitting on a hard drive from 2011. Going back years later to bolt on a clean explanation would probably break more lore than it fixes. From a marketing angle though, it's perfect. They don't pay a cent, but people are still making Mount Chiliad theory videos, still dissecting the Infinite 8 killer, still arguing if Michael or Franklin is secretly mentioned in some random Life Invader post. That ongoing noise keeps older titles culturally alive without Rockstar having to buy ads or pretend GTA Online shark cards are bedtime material. The risk is that some players feel straight up burned. When you spend a decade trying to solve a mural that never actually goes anywhere, it starts to feel less like mystique and more like being strung along, and that can turn into this jaded, nothing means anything, it's all accidents mindset. So you end up with the big question hanging over every unsolved secret. Is Rockstar actually masterminding this, carefully deciding what to leave unanswered? Or are they just incredibly good at letting accidents look intentional and cashing in on the chaos either way? So let's split that big question in two, because how you answer it changes how you feel every time you look at Mount Chiliad or some weird glyph on a wall. On one side, you've got the genius view. In this version, Rockstar is the puppet master. The Chiliad mural, the UFOs, the Infinite 8 killer numbers, the random glyph textures in the files. All of it is a layered scavenger hunt, seeded across the map and across games, with the devs fully expecting the community to tear it apart for a decade. The fact that data miners found mystery symbols with no known trigger just suggests the trail isn't finished yet. It's believed that they write jokes about conspiracy nuts in-game because they know you're going to become one outside the game, staring at screenshots at 3 am. Under that lens, Bigfoot is a perfect long con. In San Andreas, players swear they see him in the fog. No model, no mission, just stories. Years later in GTA V, it's also revealed that they canonized the myth with peyote, missions, even the Sasquatch hunter. What started as a rumor becomes real content, and that loop explains why you still check every creepy forest and every Rockstar map like it's your job. On the other side is the glitch view. In reality, a lot of this stuff looks like cut missions, half-finished ideas, and a messy iterative dev process that got frozen on release day. Those unused textures could just be mission art for something that was cut during crunch. The strange man in Red Dead, showing up again with no clear identity, might be less cosmic entity, and more we had a cool model, and no time to explain him. Rockstar staying silent isn't always 4D chess. Sometimes it's just PR not wanting to confirm that a huge community mystery was supposed to be a throwaway side quest, and both readings can be true at once. The Chiliad mural can be a deliberately designed UFO breadcrumb trail, while some extra glyphs are pure leftover junk. The Bigfoot art can start as accidental myth, then get folded into intentional design later. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a studio that watches what players obsess over and quietly builds future content around it. What changes is your mood. If you lean genius, every shadow feels like a clue, and the silence feels mystical. If you lean glitch, the same silence is kind of funny, like watching thousands of people write dissertations about a texture artist inside joke. Take the infinite 8 killer as a pattern interrupt. Genius lens. A hidden true crime storyline. Carefully plotted numbers around the map, suggesting a serial killer that ties into the wider satire of media and violence. Glitch lens. A creepy side mystery that never got its final mission, so you're basically touring set dressing. Genius again. Maybe the missing ending is the point, because real cold cases don't wrap up neatly. Glitch again. Or they just ran out of time and moved on to GTA Online. If you ain't sleeping, you can feel that mental flip happen in real time, and it sets up how we read the next batch of unsolved stories. That little flip in your brain is where something important happens. Rockstar's canon ends, and your canon quietly takes over. Headcanon is just you doing unpaid narrative design work, filling in the gaps with your own explanations so the world stops feeling like a broken quest log and starts feeling like a real place. In a game as dense and ambiguous as GTA V, your headcanon honestly covers more surface area than confirmed facts. You know Mount Chiliad has UFOs in a mural, but you don't know why the mural is painted that way, or who put it there, or what the cracked egg is supposed to represent. So your brain goes, alright, maybe it's a government experiment, or an Epsilon prophecy, or some ancient alien cult that predates Los Santos. None of that is officially revealed, but it explains the weirdness just enough for you to sleep. Communities don't just make headcanon, they start agreeing on it. The Bigfoot myth is a good example. San Andreas never had an actual Bigfoot model, but people swore they saw him in the woods because the map felt empty and creepy. Years later, GTA V basically winks at that and gives you peyote missions, a Sasquatch hunter, and a guy in a costume. The fan myth got so strong, it turned into a kind of unofficial canon that Rockstar then half-canonized back. In reality, that's how a lot of GTA lore works now. The same thing happens with the Infinite 8 Killer, with the ghost cars on Chiliad, with who the strange man might be if you connect GTA and Red Dead in your head. Nobody at Rockstar sits you down and says, here is the timeline, here is who wrote this blood message, here is exactly what the glyphs mean. Instead, people on forums and in videos build these giant theory webs, and if you ain't sleeping, you've probably adopted a few of those as facts without even noticing. Rockstar's long, strategic silence kind of blesses that. Because they don't publish a big lore Bible, you never get that moment where a dev tweet crushes your favorite idea. The mystery textures in the files, the unused glyphs, the UFOs that only spawn under specific weather and time conditions, all suggest they like watching players argue about it more than they like closing the case. It's believed that if they spelled everything out, half the fun would die overnight. So before we move on to the next batch of weirdos and cold cases, think about this. Which mystery in GTA V have you already solved in your own mind, with zero hard proof? The Chiliad mural, the Epsilon program, Michael's real past, something else entirely? Hold on to that, because the next stories are going to test how far your canon will stretch. So let's push that even further. Imagine Rockstar shows up at the foot of Mount Chiliad tomorrow and says, you get one question. One guaranteed, honest answer about any mystery in their games. No PR spin, no trolling, just the real thing. What do you burn it on, and why? Some people would go straight for the classic, explain the Mount Chiliad mural, every symbol, every trigger, every outcome. That choice kind of reveals you as the puzzle solver. You're the person who actually read all the Infinite 8 notes, who stood on the cable car platform during storms, who believes that if you just had the full Chiliad script, all the UFOs, glyphs and cut textures would finally click into place. It's believed that a lot of cut content is still hiding behind that mountain, so wanting this answer means you care about systems, not vibes. Someone else would waste zero time and ask about the Infinity 8 killer's real identity. That puts you in the horror lane. You're more interested in the feeling of a serial killer, breathing down Los Santos' neck than in jetpacks. The bloody cars, the bodies in the ocean, the messages carved into walls, all of that suggests a person, a face, a motive that Rockstar never shows you. Picking this mystery explains that what keeps you up, if you ain't sleeping, isn't aliens. It's the idea that a human did this and walked away. Then you've got the strange man crowd. They'd ask, who is he actually, and how many games is he really in? That's the metalore brain. You're the type who connects Red Dead's desert ghost to Gita's city cults, who wants confirmation that these worlds bleed into each other in ways the games only wink at. A shared universe question is the same thing. If you spend your time mapping timelines between HD GTA and Red Dead, you want Rockstar to admit it's all one giant cursed soap opera. And then, pattern interrupt, Rockstar leans in and goes, great question. The truth is, we like to leave some things up to the player's interpretation. Then, they patch in 3 more UFOs, a new glyph, and log off for 10 years. In reality, that's kind of what they already do. Which is why your question says a lot about you. Maybe you'd ask about Michael's real past, or if Abigail actually killed her husband, because you want emotional closure more than cosmic answers. Or maybe you'd do the opposite and say, don't tell me anything. Some players actually prefer the gaps. They like that the strange man never fully explains himself, that Chiliad never gets a dev commentary, that the Infinity 8 killer stays a shadow. So as we go into the next set of stories, grab some snacks and keep that in the back of your mind. If you had Rockstar in the interrogation room for one night only, which file are you slamming down on the table? And the funny thing is, you're probably not even imagining that interrogation room in full HD. It's more like these soft, half-formed scenes drifting in while you're staring at the ceiling. That's kind of why this slow, meandering lore talk works so well right before you knock out. When you're falling asleep, your brain does the same thing this video does. It jumps from Steve Haynes to Mount Chiliad, from the Infinity 8 killer to some random Life Invader dev, and it doesn't always finish the thought. It just lets the thread dangle because it knows it can come back later. The way we wander through conspiracies and cut content basically mirrors the way your mind free roams, when it's too tired to grind ranked, but too awake to just shut off. Unresolved questions give your brain something soft to chew on. You're not replaying arguments or bills. You're wondering why Rockstar put a mural of a UFO and an egg on a mountain and then never properly explained it. It's complex enough to be interesting, but gentle enough that it doesn't spike your heart rate. Thinking about whether the strange man is some cosmic judge, or if that unused glyph texture meant a scrapped mission, is low-stakes mystery. If you ain't sleeping, it's the kind of puzzle that lets your thoughts drift without stressing you out. And because you've been here before, it's also comforting. Mount Chiliad at night, the red warning lights blinking in your memory, the rain over Los Santos freeway, the neon in Vinewood, revisiting those places in your head feels like putting on a movie you've already watched 10 times. You know roughly where everything is. You know that if you drive out to Grapeseed at 3 a.m. in-game, you might see a ghost car or a weird light. And that familiarity is what makes it cozy instead of creepy. It's believed that's why people keep coming back to the same myths, even after data miners have ripped the game apart. The structure of this whole thing is kind of built around you drifting in and out. You might have zoned out during the part about Bigfoot being fake in San Andreas and then canon in GTA V, and when you blink back in, we're suddenly talking about fib black sites like it's the most natural segue ever. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a classroom if we had headings and slides, but in reality, it's closer to how your brain rewinds and fast forwards while you're half asleep on the couch. And we're still only skimming the surface. There are tiny mysteries we didn't touch tonight, stray radio lines that don't match any mission, weird props under the ocean, background NPCs that act like they remember you from another life. Those are staying in the dark for now, waiting for another late session. Because after this is done, and you wake up or you hit replay, we're going even deeper into the stuff Rockstar buried where almost nobody was supposed to look. So before we dive even deeper, just let your brain stretch out for a second and float back over what we've been wandering through tonight. You don't have to sit up and take notes. You're basically just being carried back across the map one more time. Way up on that mountain, you've got the Mount Chiliad mural staring down at you like it knows something you don't. The cracked lines, the UFO sketches, the little jetpack icon that never actually shows up in normal gameplay. All of it turned into the central, unsolved puzzle of GTA V. Because players linked it to the UFO network, the Fort Zancudo saucer, the Chiliad storm trigger, even the weird glyphs in the tunnels. It's believed that this one drawing pretty much shaped modern GTA mystery culture. One painting on a wall, and suddenly everybody screenshotting clouds and counting red lights on radio towers. Then you drop back to street level, and the tone shifts. You've got the Infinity 8 killer, who feels uncomfortably real because his story is told through body bags, graffiti, and numbers instead of a boss fight. You've got Jolene's ghost on the side of the road quietly replaying her last moments while you drive past at 3 a.m., and the game never explains who she really was. And sitting over all of that is the strange man, this impossible figure who shows up in Red Dead and GTA lore, watching, smiling, never actually giving you an answer. It's also revealed that he keeps appearing in different eras, but Rockstar never says why, so he just lives rent-free in the back of your head. Around them you've got the whole messy ecosystem that keeps the speculation machine running. Cults like Epsilon and the Altruists that feel half satire, half actual doomsday group chat. Unreachable interiors with fully modeled rooms you can only glitch into. Cut content sitting in the files like mystery textures and unused glyphs that suggest missions or events that never made it to release. And then the hoaxes, fake jetpack methods, made-up Chiliad steps, Bigfoot-style rumors that start as a joke and end up with people combing every inch of the map. In reality, that chaos is what keeps the world feeling alive long after the credits roll. All of it loops back to Rockstar's silence. Because when they don't step in and explain, you end up doing the writing for them. You connect the mural to the UFOs, the killer to the ghost, the cults to the strange man, and suddenly you're a co-author of the lore instead of just a player. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a studio that plans every detail, but it also works if some of it is just forgotten code and happy accidents. And if you ain't sleeping, don't stress about remembering every name or every number painted on a wall. There's no quiz, no perfect theory you have to land on. The whole point is that feeling of wandering through these questions together, letting the city, the desert, and the mountains blur into one long, strange drive. So just stay where you are, grab some snacks in your mind if you need to, and let the next set of secrets roll in while the old ones quietly hum in the background. And the funny part is, in 2024, you're not really supposed to have that feeling anymore. Every game gets cracked open by wikis, data memes, and frame-by-frame YouTube breakdowns before the credits even stop rolling. So most mysteries die the second the patch notes go live. That's why the stuff Rockstar never fully explains ends up feeling weirdly precious, like it slipped through the cracks of the internet and decided to stay feral. Mount Chiliad is the perfect example. The mural gets picked apart, the UFO spawns are mapped, the jetpack files are dug up, and it's also revealed that half the triggers are just weather and time checks. On paper it's solved. But because Rockstar never came out and gave you the official teacher's answer key, it still sits in your brain as unfinished homework. Same with the strange man in Red Dead. or those unused glyph textures in GTRV's files that seem to point to something that never actually fires. In reality, the lack of a final word is what keeps the conversation going. So a single-player game stops being this one-and-done story you beat and uninstall. It turns into an ongoing group project that runs for years across Reddit threads, Discord servers, and late-night rabbit holes like this. People who played on Xbox 360 in 2013 are still comparing notes with people who just bought the game on PC last week, arguing about Bigfoot, the Infinite 8 killer, or why that one door in Los Santos is modeled like it should open but never does. If you ain't sleeping, you're basically clocked in as unpaid QA. This would make a lot more sense in the context of how Rockstar writes, because they blur the line between what they authored and what you fill in. They write the mural, but the community writes the religion around it. They drop a ghost car on a mountain road at night, and suddenly you've got 10 different fan theories about cults, cut missions, or a scrap serial killer arc. It's believed that half the lore people repeat about these games is fanfiction that got told so confidently it circled back into canon. And yeah, not every mystery is deep. Some are just bugs, leftovers, or props an artist thought looked cool. A random locked shack might just be a random locked shack. But when you stack hundreds of those little oddities next to the actually intentional secrets, you get this texture of possibility, where every alley, billboard, or glitchy shadow could be hiding something. That's what makes the world feel alive long after the story missions are done. So as long as Rockstar keeps building these dense, messy sandboxes, players are going to keep finding mysteries, whether they're meant to be there or not. And the next batch of secrets we're about to go into only proves that some of the strangest ones don't even need UFOs or murals at all. And if you're somehow still here with your eyes open, this is kind of your part of the mystery. If you ain't sleeping, you can slide down to the comments and quietly drop the Rockstar question that haunts you the most. It can be a big one, like what the Mount Chiliad mural was really meant to be. Or something tiny, like a weird NPC convo you heard once and never found again. Just the one you'd most like answered if Rockstar ever broke their silence for 5 minutes. You can also treat it like a little case file. If you've ever had one of those strange GTA or Red Dead moments that felt like the start of a side quest that never loaded, write it out. Maybe you were driving in Blaine County and a random ghost car rolled past with no driver. Or you saw an NPC model in Valentine that looked way too much like the strange man watching you from a distance. Stuff that felt off, but the game just moved on. In reality, a lot of those moments are probably bugs, reused assets, or cut content bleeding through. But that's kind of the fun part. Your brain fills in what Rockstar didn't. So if something glitched, looped, or acted like it was about to trigger a secret event and then didn't, that's exactly the kind of story that fits this late night lore session. Try to keep it like we're all sitting around the same in-game campfire. You drop a theory. Someone else replies with a line of dialogue they remember. Another person cross-references a texture from the files or a cut mission that was revealed by data miners. And suddenly you've built a better explanation than anything official. It's believed that half of the Chiliad theories only stayed alive because people kept doing that for years. Just keep it respectful. If someone thinks the Infinite 8 killer connects to a totally different character, or that the strange man is literally death walking between universes, let them cook a little before you tell them why you disagree. The comments can basically be the extended cut of this video, where all the side theories and cross-references live. And it's also revealed that revisiting this stuff together is what actually keeps the mysteries going. Rockstar might never fully explain the mural, or the missing years between games, or why certain glyphs exist with no mission attached. But as long as people keep bringing them up, they never really die. They just shift into new versions every time someone replays the game. If you're half asleep, don't worry about typing anything. You can just listen, let other people do the detective work, and maybe come back tomorrow when you're awake and add your own weird story. Because this is a long one, and we've still got more secrets to walk through before you actually pass out. So if you just woke up and have no idea how we got from washed up Vinewood producers to UFO cults, that's fine. This whole thing is built so you can drift in and out, and it still kind of makes sense when your brain boots back up. The lore in GTA V loops on itself anyway. Mount Chiliad leads to UFOs. UFOs lead to the Epsilon program. Epsilon leads back to Michael's midlife crisis and celebrity culture, which quietly circles back to why half of Los Santos is either in a cult or in therapy. You can drop in during any part of that circle, and it's believed that your brain will just fill in the gaps like it's overhearing gossip on a bus. So if you're hearing words like Infinity 8 in the middle of the night and thinking you missed a chapter, you really didn't. One night you can let the Chiliad stuff wash over you. Just the mural, the glyphs, the UFOs, all the cut textures that suggest Rockstar had way more planned. Another night you can focus on the Infinity 8 killer, all the bodies in the ocean, the numbers on the walls, the way it's also revealed that some textures exist in the files with no clear use, like the game is taunting data miners specifically. Then, on a third listen, if you ain't sleeping by then, you can just ride with the ghosts and cults, the Jolene Cranley Evans ghost on Mount Gordo, the Epsilon robes, the altruist camp, all these side details that sound like a horror podcast if you catch them at 3 a.m. in the dark. This would make a lot more sense in the context of a normal documentary, but in reality GTA V treats murdered hikers and doomsday billboards like background noise. That's why the pacing is this constant info dump. It's meant to feel like a familiar podcast or audiobook you can replay, where you recognize the names before you even remember who they are. You don't have to keep track of every date and mission name. You just let it layer. Each replay adds one more tiny connection between some dead Vinewood starlet, a corrupt fib agent, and a mural on a mountain. If you want to get more surgical when you're actually awake, you can use the timestamps or chapters. You can jump straight to Chiliad Nights, or straight to Infinity 8 dives, or only listen to celebrity scandals and cults while you fall asleep. You can basically build your own cursed bedtime playlist inside one video. And be honest, by the time you've heard the Chiliad segment 10 times, you're probably going to solve it in a dream long before Rockstar ever comments on it. You'll wake up convinced you cracked the mural because Trevor was holding the jetpack in your sleep. Then, you'll come back here, realize Rockstar still hasn't said anything, and we'll just go back to connecting red string between billboards and radio ads. So you end up with this weird loop where your brain is doing conspiracy work while you sleep, and Los Santos just quietly keeps the lights on in the background. Out past all the red string and half-finished theories, the city actually calms down a bit. Picture it. It's 3 a.m. in game, traffic has thinned out, and the haze over Vinewood turns the sign into a soft glow instead of a punchline. Up north, Mount Chiliad is just a dark triangle against the sky, the mural hidden on the inside like it's trying not to be noticed for once. If you ain't sleeping, you can almost hear the wind up there, and you start wondering how many players are standing on that same peak right now, staring at the same pattern, waiting for a jetpack that never spawns. Out over the ocean, the waves keep looping into Paleto Bay, and the secret UFOs are either hovering just out of render distance or not there at all, depending on how generous you're feeling tonight. The seabed is still full of wrecks, Infinite 8 graffiti, and those random glyphs Rockstar never explained, and the game doesn't care if you swim down to see them or just drive past on the highway listening to Chakra talk about crystals. The mysteries don't reset when you log off. They just sit there, like props left on a stage after the audience goes home. Every time you load into GTA V, all of that is still waiting. The ghost on Mount Gordo is still locked to that tiny time window. The altruist camp is still hiding its weird notes. Omega is still somewhere out in the desert, acting like the only sane person in the game. because at least he admits he has no idea what's going on. You can chase every rumor, or you can spawn a body, rip down the freeway, and let all of it blur into neon and billboards. The game doesn't punish you for not solving anything. It's believed that this might be Rockstar's best trick. They build worlds that feel big enough that not knowing everything actually feels okay. In reality, most of the files have been data mined. Most of the flags have been flipped. And it's also revealed that a lot of unsolved stuff is probably just cut content with fancy textures. But the way the radio talks, the way NPCs mutter about cults and disappearances, the way the sky opens up when that one UFO appears in a thunderstorm, this would make a lot more sense in the context of a story you never fully get to read. So for tonight, you can let it go a bit. You can pause on a hill above the city, watch the grid of lights pulse like a circuit board, and decide if you want to queue up another lore, deep dive, or just let the mini-map fade from your brain. No loud outro, no big answer reveal, just you, the distant hum of Los Santos, and a quiet reminder that all these mysteries will still be here the next time you can't sleep and decide to come back.